Chapter 1802. Elder Fong was still beautiful and charming. Her slender almond-shaped eyes were overflowing with colors and captivating. Her almond-shaped eyes glared at Chu Li coldly. "How dare you? Aren't you afraid of revealing your true colors?" Chu Li was stunned. He closed fists saluted. "Elder Fong, why do you say that? Tell me, confess your identity." Elder Fong said in a low voice, "Don't play dumb. Who are you?" Chu Li was stunned. "Elder Fong, I'm confused. I don't understand what you mean. Who am I?" "You're not Bai Li Na." Elder Fong sneered. Chu Li looked at Lu Jun beside him, and then at Song Jifan. Song Jifan was dressed in a blue robe with a shiny golden crown. His face was like a beautiful jade. His star-like eyes were carefully sizing him up as if he wanted to see every minute expression on his face. Chu Li was confused. "I'm not Bai Li Na." Elder Fong scoffed. "Bai Li Na isn't that strong. Elder, after my isolated cultivation, my martial arts improve a lot. I'm indeed stronger." Chu Li smiled bitterly. "But it's not to the point where I'm not me. Sai, I should have died under Meng Xiaoqi's knife to avoid putting you in a difficult position." Elder Fong suddenly smiled sweetly and turned to look at Song Jifan. "Bishop, it seems like there's no problem. That's good." Song Jifan nodded slowly and stared at Chu Li. "Bai Li Na, we're in a bad situation now. Be careful." Chu Li was stunned. "Bad situation? Bishop, you're worrying too much. Who can find us here?" "Chu Li." Song Jifan scoffed. Chu Li frowned. "He found us." "That's right." Song Jifan scoffed. "Ever since the floating mountain left its original position, it has been isolated from the outside world. How did Chu Li find it?" Chu Li shook his head. "Since it's isolated from the outside world, it's naturally not a traitor. Maybe Chu Li has other tricks up his sleeve." "Bishop, Bai Li Na's words make sense," Elder Fong said. Song Jifan said, "If Bai Li Na can find it, why can't Chu Li? How did you find it?" Chu Li was stunned and looked at Lu Jun. Lu Jun said, "Cult Master, this is a secret mark that I left behind." "You dash." Song Jifan frowned. "Why did you leave a secret mark?" Lu Jun hesitated. "Old Bai hasn't come back yet." You're quite loyal." Song Jifan snorted and interrupted him. "Stupid." Lu Jun lowered his head in embarrassment. Chu Li said, "Bishop, it's my fault. I've gotten used to being alone. I'm free and undisciplined. When I got excited, I went into isolated cultivation. I completely forgot to inform the church so that you won't worry. If you do this again, I'll expel you from the sect." Song Jifan said coldly. "Yes." Chu Li gave a fist salute. Song Jifan was very confident in Lu Jun. If Lu Jun could not be trusted, then there would be no one else in the sect that could be trusted. He turned around and left the hall. Chu Li stayed behind and asked in confusion, "Elder, what's going on?" "Chu Li has come looking for me." Elder Fong shook her head and sighed. "This Chu Li is really resourceful. I don't know what methods he used to find us, but he made the bishop so angry." Chu Li said, "He's really angry. The bishop must have suffered a loss, right?" He lowered his voice when he said this. Elder Fong glared at him. Lu Jun said impatiently, "Old Bai, be careful with your words. If the bishop hears you, he'll definitely punish you. The bishop's temper is bad now. He's different from before." Chu Li nodded. "He was provoked by Chu Li, right?" "Yes." Lu Jun sighed. After the battle at Goddess Attraction Mountain, Chu Li became the #1 master in the world. No one can surpass him. The bishop is upset and is about to go into isolated cultivation to surpass Chu Li. "The bishop has a mystical technique?" Chu Li was surprised. "The ageless longevity technique is already a supreme technique. Although the ageless longevity technique is strong, it's not good at attacking." Lu Jun lowered his voice. "I heard that the bishop is cultivating a grandmaster's mystical study. If he can master it, he could defeat Chu Li and become the #1 in the world. The grandmaster's mystical study can be passed down." Chu Li was surprised. Lu Jun said proudly, "Our founder is powerful and has a high position in the grandmaster's domain. That's why some things can't be done by our founder." Chu Li sighed. "It seems like the grandmaster is not a pure land. It's the same everywhere," Lu Jun said. Elder Fong said, Bailey Na, now that you're back, join the Heaven's Punishment Hall. The Heaven's Punishment Hall? Chu Li was stunned. He smiled. Elder, how am I qualified? If I say you are, Elder Fong said. The Heaven's Punishment Hall is the most unlikable place. I'm not sure if you're willing. Of course I'm willing. It's my honor to enter the Heaven's Punishment Hall. Chu Li quickly said. That's good. I'll come over tomorrow morning after breakfast and bring you into the Heaven's Punishment Hall, Elder Fong said. Yes. Chu Li fist saluted. Lu Jun returned to his courtyard with him. Chu Li realized that his courtyard was clean and tidy. It was often cleaned. Thank you, Brother Lu. Chu Li sat in the gazebo with him. He looked around and sighed. If it wasn't for Brother Lu, I wouldn't have been able to come back. I'm afraid I would have been abandoned by the church. Just thinking about it makes me scared. That won't be the case. Lu Jun said. Even if you can't find him, you'll find him in the future. Once the church leader cultivates the divine technique, you'll be known by the world. Chu Li said the last 2 times, the church leader was like this. He thought he could defeat Chu Li once he cultivated the divine technique, but he still lost. It's different this time. Lu Jun shook his head. This time, he cultivated the Grandmaster's domain. It's powerful. Chu Li smiled. If it's that powerful, why couldn't a single celestial beat Chu Li? Because the celestial that descended are not that great. If the founder descends, Chu Li will be finished. Lu Jun scoffed. Chu Li smiled. The founder can descend? How could the founder do such a thing? Sending 2 celestial is enough. Lu Jun said. Chu Li said, if that's the case, there are celestials in our church. Yes. Lu Jun nodded slowly and lowered his voice. There are many celestials. These people are arrogant and look down on everyone. They don't even look us in the eye. Don't lower yourself to their level. Chu Li frowned. This is our territory. How can we allow them to be so presumptuous? They're indeed stronger than us. Lu Jun said. Bear with it for now. When the church leader cultivates the divine technique and suppresses them, they'll naturally behave. Are they disrespectful to the church leader? Chu Li's expression changed. Lu Jun shook his head. They're not disrespectful. They're just arrogant. It's obvious that they think the church leader is a young boy. They don't treat him as the church leader. Their tone is like giving advice. They're taking advantage of their seniority. It's annoying. The church leader can bear with it. Chu Li was filled with anger. Lu Jun said, the church leader can bear with it. He'll bear with it. He also said that he'll settle the score with them after he cultivates the divine technique. Chu Li smiled. He initially wanted to stir up internal strife in the Church of Longevity. It seemed like it was easier than he imagined. All right, take a break. I'll come and look for you tomorrow morning. We'll go to the Heaven's Punishment Hall together. It's not easy for you to enter the Heaven's Punishment Hall, Lu Jun said. Without sufficient qualifications and contributions, as well as loyalty, one can't enter the Heaven's Punishment Hall at all. Chu Li nodded hard. It's all thanks to Elder Fong's kindness. Chapter 1803. The next morning, after Chu Li had his breakfast, Lu Jun came over to the Heaven's Punishment Hall with him. Inside the Heaven's Punishment Hall, the smell of sandalwood filled the air. The entire hall was enveloped by the spirit tiger's aura. It was strict and cold, suffocating people. Even if Chu Li concealed his cultivation level, he could still calmly stand in the spirit tiger's aura. Those who could enter the hall could remain calm in the spirit tiger's aura. Otherwise, they would not have the qualifications to stay in the hall. When the 2 of them entered, there were already more than 50 people standing in the hall. Elder Fong sat in the armchair in the middle. She was dressed in black and had a white cloak. She looked less charming, but more valiant and dignified. Her almond-shaped eyes were filled with murderous intent. No one dared to look at her directly. Beside her was Bishop Song Jifan. He was dressed in a blue robe and a golden crown. In front of Elder Fong stood 2 rows of middle-aged men dressed in black. Their faces were gloomy and their eyes were cold. They exuded an unapproachable aura. Beside the 2 rows of men in black stood more than 10 elders. They were obviously of high status and had an extraordinary bearing. After Chu Li stepped into the hall, Elder Fong's bright eyes swept across, and she waved her hand. Chu Li gave a fist salute and strode along the path formed by 2 rows of middle-aged men in black clothes to Elder Fong. "Greetings, Elder." Everyone's eyes fell on him. They were all different. Some were envious, some were jealous, some were disdainful, some were resentful. They all had different emotions. Chuli could capture each and every one of their gazes. He could clearly feel their emotions and imprint them in his mind. "You'll need to make an enlightened oath to join the Heaven's Punishment Hall today. Are you ready?" Elder Fong said in a low voice. Her face was tense, and her eyes were cold. Chuli nodded solemnly. Yes. He was secretly shocked. He did not expect to have to make an enlightened oath. This oath was binding. Once it was made, there would be punishment from the Grandmaster. Elder Fong saw that he did not hesitate and nodded in satisfaction. "All right, if that's the case, let's begin." "Wait!" A shout suddenly sounded. Chuli frowned. Through the omniscient mirror, he saw a plain-looking young man enter the basilica. The brilliance around him was restrained, and he was as gentle as jade. However, he was a celestial being with an extremely high cultivation level. His level should be 4 ranks higher than the Tang family's elder ancestor, Tang Jiang. It was very likely that he was a rank 3 celestial being. Chuli pretended not to know and turned his head to look. Elder Fong's face darkened. She narrowed her eyes and glared at the person who came. Song Ji-Fan's face darkened, but he regained his composure. This young man had thick eyebrows and big eyes. He looked like a simple and honest young man from a farmer's family. His yellow robe was luxurious and extraordinary. He raised his chin slightly and looked disdainful. Before he even spoke, he already gave off a feeling of arrogance, as if he was looking down on everyone. "Greetings, sect leader. Greetings, hall master fan." The yellow-robed youth cupped his fists. "Forgive me for overstepping my bounds. Senior Gua, you're welcome." Song Ji-Fan cupped his fists and smiled. "Speak your mind." Although in his heart he was cursing the old fart for pointing fingers and gesticulating again, he really deserved to die. His face was warm and genial, as if he couldn't wait to hear Guizhongjing speak. Guizhongjing came closer and sized Chuli up. His gaze was like lightning, as if he wanted to see through Chuli. Chuli cupped his fists and looked at him calmly. "Forgive me for being blunt. If this Bailey Na wants to join the Heaven's Punishment Hall, he's still lacking," Guizhongjing said in a low voice. "Oh," Elder Fong said faintly. "I hope Elder Gua can point out what he's lacking. He doesn't have enough experience to convince the masses." Guizhongjing shook his head. "I heard that he's only been in the church for less than a year." "Yes," Elder Fong said slowly. Guizhongjing could not help but laugh. Since when did the Heaven's Punishment Hall become so lax that a follower who hasn't been in for a year can join the Heaven's Punishment Hall? Elder Fong said, "There are exceptions to everything. Disciples who have made exceptional contributions and proven their loyalty can be promoted to the Heaven's Punishment Hall as an exception." "He's considered to be promoted as an exception?" Guizhongjing glanced at Chuli. "Yes. The bishop can prove it," Elder Fong said in a low voice. Song Ji-Fan coughed softly and glanced at Elder Fong. He really did not want to deal with this old man, but Elder Fong just had to push him to the front. "Elder Gua, this Bailey Na has gone through fire and water with me. He's risked his life to save me multiple times. There's no need to doubt his loyalty." Oh, Guizhongjing glanced at Chuli. With his cultivation level, what's the use of risking his life? Bailey Na's sacrificial divine power is of an extremely high level. If he were to risk his life, the power would still be great, Song Ji-Fan smiled. He felt that his smile must be extremely stiff. He hoped that Guizhongjing could see it and be more tactful. However, he immediately rejected the idea of getting lucky. If Guizhongjing was really tactful, he would not have jumped out at this time. They were about to enter the hall for the ceremony. He would be humiliating Elder Fong and himself in front of all the elders and the hall leader. Even if he's loyal and has a high cultivation level, he's not experienced enough. Jinba is also an outstanding young man. He's neither young nor old like him with mediocre aptitude. Guizhongjing shook his head. Chuli gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, "Please allow me to say a few words." "It's not your place to speak," Guizhongjing said in a low voice. His gaze was like lightning, as if he was going to kill him the next moment. Chu Li met his lightning-like gaze calmly and fearlessly. Elder Gua, why do you have to be so overbearing? This is the Heaven's Punishment Hall, the Church of Longevity, not the Outland. Gua Zhongjing looked at him in shock. Chu Li scoffed. Elder Gua, even if you're a celestial being, don't forget your duty. Elder Gua, you're not here to criticize the teaching affairs, right? If you have the time, you should rest and build up your energy so that you can defend against the enemy once they attack. How dare you? Gua Zhongjing shouted. This shout was like a drum being hit. Everyone in the hall felt their hearts skip a beat. Their blood was boiling, and they felt like they were injured. Chu Li's expression changed. He had used the life and death scripture to age himself, and his cultivation level had deteriorated. He was only 3 times Bailey Na's original level, and was already one of the top in the Outland. However, he was still injured by this shout. Moreover, he was the first to be hit. Gua Zhongjing's shout was directed at him. His internal organs were in turmoil, and blood rushed to the corner of his mouth. He forcefully swallowed it and licked the blood back. His eyes became brighter, and he stared at Gua Zhongjing unyieldingly. Elder Gua, do you think I'm wrong? This is the Bishop's Church of Longevity, not your Church of Longevity. Elder Gua, you're a scoundrel, Gua Zhongjing shouted. This shout was more violent than the previous one. It was the real musical assassination technique. Chu Li felt his vision shaking violently, and his vision darkened. His body swayed a few times, and he almost fell. He could not stabilize himself, even if he wanted to. Elder Gua. Song Jifan took a step forward and lightly patted Chu Li's back. Immediately, a gush of inner energy entered his body and calmed Chu Li's boiling blood. His vision became clear again, but the corner of his mouth was bleeding. However, Chu Li did not care. He widened his eyes and stared at Gua Zhongjing with an unyielding look. Chapter 1804. Seeing this, Song Jifan secretly vented his anger. As the bishop, he could not do as he pleased. He had long been filled with anger, but he could not let it out. Moreover, he had to pretend to be magnanimous and tolerant. Because they were sent by the founding master, they had to be respectful, or else it would be disrespectful to the founding master. However, these people were too much. They were all arrogant and unruly, as if he was a pile of sh*t and did everything wrong. It was as if they were the only ones who were right. Although their mouths called him cult master, their eyes revealed that he was only a young lad who did not understand anything. His mouth was hairless, and he could not do things properly. Whatever he did was not appropriate, and he needed their guidance. He detested this sort of contempt the most, especially because their existences had damaged his dignity as the sect master. It was like he'd become the sovereign sect's master. If they really were the founding ancestor, then he would endure it. After all, the founding ancestor was wise and mighty. However, they were just people sent by the founding master to assist him. Yet they were so arrogant. They were originally servants, but they became masters. He wanted to teach them a lesson, but he could not. Otherwise, if the news spread to the founding master, or if he beat them away, he would be in trouble. Unfortunately, there was no one who could do it for him. Lu Jun was considerate, but he was dull and could not understand his thoughts. Even after he hinted twice, he still did not take action. Bailey Na was the most comfortable one. He just came back, and he went against these old people. It didn't matter if Bailey Na's cultivation base wasn't strong enough. As long as he dared to fight back, he would damage the dignity of these 4 Devis, forcing them to restrain themselves a bit. Moreover, they could also use this opportunity to help Bailey Na block a bit, and show off their power to these 4 guys. Since he could not fight, he had to let them know their place. Naturally, he had to show off his power. He lightly removed the injuries in Chu Li's body with his palm. Then, a warm force entered his body and circled around his body. His internal organs quickly recovered. It was a miraculous effect. Chu Li turned to look at Song Jifan and sighed. This skill was really superb and not inferior to him. He closed fists, saluted, and said, "Thank you, Bishop." Song Jifan waved his hand and said, "Bailey Na, Don't be so presumptuous in front of Senior Gua. Sect Master is wise. Chu Li gave a fist salute and said, "It's not that I'm being unreasonable. It's just that this Senior Gua is being ridiculous." Initially, Temple Leader Fan only needed to say the word to join the Heaven's Punishment Hall, and even the bishop had agreed to it. What kind of position does this Senior Gua hold to be able to reject the bishop's order? Gua Zhongjing's electrifying gaze swept across Chu Li, then glanced at Song Jifan's right hand that was pressing on Chu Li's shoulder. He calmly said, "I'm the third-generation Heaven's Punishment Hall leader of the Longevity Church. If I were in the Grand Master's boundary, I wouldn't care about the Heaven's Punishment Hall. Since I'm back in the church, I naturally won't allow this to happen." "Ah, so you're the former palace leader of Heaven's Punishment Hall. I apologize for my disrespect." Chu Li gave a fist salute and shook his head. As the saying goes, one should not meddle in politics if one is not in a position. Since Senior Gua has already stepped down from his position, Palace Leader Fan will now be in charge of Heaven's Punishment Hall. It's not Senior Gua's place yet. What a sharp tongue. Gua Zhongjing snorted. With a cold snort, he once again used the musical assassination technique. Song Jifan had expected this, so he kept his palm pressed on Chu Li's shoulder and channeled his inner energy into it. As soon as the musical assassination technique entered Chu Li's ear, his inner energy immediately sped up and quickly neutralized the energy that was drilling into his ear. Chu Li only felt a gentle force protecting his body, preventing him from being hurt by the cold snort. He became even more unscrupulous as he scoffed. "I don't deserve Senior Gua's praise. I'm just speaking the truth. Even if Senior Gua has a high position and is experienced, you can't go beyond reason and the church's rules. My entry into the hall is not against the church's rules, and I've also received the bishop and the palace leader's approval. I really don't know why Senior Gua is stopping me. Could it be that Senior Gua doesn't trust the bishop and the palace leader's decision?" Good. Gua Zhongjing sneered. "I've really underestimated you." Chu Li gave a fist salute. "I'm ashamed. My personality has always been like this. I say whatever I want to say, and I can't hide it. Bishop, do you really want him to enter Heaven's Punishment Hall?" Gua Zhongjing turned to look at Song Jifan. Song Jifan let go of Chu Li's shoulder and chuckled. "Senior Gua, you've tested him out too, haven't you? Although Bailey Na is still inexperienced and his cultivation level is still passable, his personality and way of doing things are indeed suitable for Heaven's Punishment Hall." He cursed in his heart. He could only give this old man a way out of this embarrassing situation, but it seemed like he would not be able to back down. Gua Zhongjing's expression cleared up. He sized Chu Li up with his electrifying gaze and slowly revealed a smile. "Not bad. Seeing you in person is indeed better than hearing about you by reputation. This Bailey Na is indeed suitable for Heaven's Punishment Hall." Chu Li quickly smiled. "So is Senior Gua, who tested me out. I really fell for it. I'm so stupid, I'm ashamed." Gua Zhongjing waved his hand and looked at him meaningfully. He allowed a light smile. "You have such guts and courage. You dare to offend anyone in the church. You're indeed a qualified disciple of Heaven's Punishment Hall. It's the blessing of the Church of Longevity that Heaven's Punishment Hall can grow stronger. Congratulations, Bishop." Song Jifan sighed in his heart. This old man's cultivation was deep. His expression did not change, and others could not tell if he was telling the truth or not. He gave a fist salute and smiled. "Thank you, Senior Gua." Gua Zhongjing took a step back and said, "The auspicious time is here. It's time to enter the hall." Song Jifan secretly cursed him for being cunning. His actions really made it hard for others to tell the truth from the lie. Even Chu Li himself was doubting if he was really testing him and not purposely obstructing him. Chu Li then made the enlightened oath in front of everyone. Bailey Na would be loyal to Heaven's Punishment Hall for life. Otherwise, his soul would be destroyed and he would never be able to reincarnate. Chu Li got lucky and only swore in the name of Bailey Na. When Chu Li returned to the courtyard, Lu Jun came back with him. He looked at the black robe in Chu Li's hand and smiled. "Quick, change into it." Chu Li smiled and entered the house to change into the black robe. He walked around the courtyard. Lu Jun looked at him and praised him. He felt that he was very impressive. This set of black robe was extremely powerful, giving Chu Li a slightly more dignified aura. Anyone who saw him could not help but feel a sense of inferiority and discouragement. Chu Li revealed a proud expression. "Elder Bailey, you're too reckless today." Lu Jun shook his head and sighed. Chu Li brewed tea, and the two sat next to the red clay stove. "I can't not be reckless." Chu Li shook his head. "If I didn't talk back to him, I wouldn't have become a disciple of Heaven's Punishment Hall. I can't believe he's the former Lord of Heaven's Punishment Hall. So what if he's the former Lord of Heaven's Punishment Hall?" Lu Jun scoffed. "You said it yourself. Don't meddle in other people's business after you've retired." Chu Li nodded. "Lord Fan must be very angry." He. You didn't see the expression on the Lord's face. He looked like he was really going to kill someone. Lu Jun shook his head. "But you went against old man Gua. You won't end up well. Be careful. He'll definitely cause you trouble." Chu Li raised his eyebrows. "He's a senior. He won't do that, right? He's a vengeful person. You better not run into him, or he'll definitely make a move," Lu Jun said in a serious tone. Chu Li nodded slowly. Lu Jun smiled. "But no matter what he does, he won't take your life. At most, you'll suffer some physical pain." Chu Li smiled. "He won't find an excuse to kill me, will he?" Chapter 1805. Seeing his hesitation, Chu Li knew that he could not guarantee anything. Thinking about it, as the former Lord of the Heaven's Punishment Hall, he must be very strict and fair, or else it would be difficult to convince the public. However, during the entrance ceremony, he was not as fair and strict. Was it because he had experienced something different after becoming a celestial being, which caused his temperament to change, or was there a deeper meaning? Chu Li gave up after thinking for a while. In short, Guozhang Jing was not a good person, so it was better to be careful. For the next few days, Chu Li stayed in his courtyard. He sat quietly in the courtyard and painstakingly deduced the patterns on the heart of Azura, thinking about his own path. He did not want to step into the Grandmaster's boundary, as he only wanted to protect Shao Qi and the High Duke's public house. Once he stepped into the Grandmaster's boundary, his enemies would definitely take revenge on the High Duke's public house and Shao Qi. After cultivating to become an enlightened master, he was not limited by the time. He could stay in the world as long as he wanted. He had the ageless longevity technique, so his lifespan was much longer than ordinary enlightened masters. After using the ageless longevity technique a few times, he realized that his lifespan was not as endless as he thought. Even if he could extend his lifespan, it could not be unlimited. The key was still the depth of the ageless longevity technique. His current upper limit was 2,000 years, which was not comparable to the lifespan of a celestial being. Since the Taiching sect and the mysterious Lady of the Nine Heavens had the ability to extend one's lifespan, 2,000 years was not a big problem, so he could stay in the world for a long time. The pattern of the heart of Azura was unusually complicated, and there was an invisible force that hindered deduction. To find out the truth, he needed to use the heavenly astral insight. The easiest way was to find the heavenly astral jade badge and rob it. Unfortunately, Song Wuji was prepared for this. He did not want the Changshan Church to become the target of the Celestials, so he sent a celestial being to guard it. He could feel the existence of 4 Celestials. Guozhang Jing and another Celestial should be rank 3, but he did not know which rank the other 2 were, but they were comparable to him, so it would be difficult to kill them in a short time. If he could not kill them within a few moves, Song Wuji must have a backup plan, so it would be difficult to get the Heavenly Astral Jade Badge. Once his target was exposed as the Heavenly Astral Jade Badge, his weakness would be exposed, and he would definitely use it to threaten him. He hated the feeling of being threatened, so he had to be careful not to expose his target and hit his target in one hit. He had to provoke the internal strife of the Changshan sect first. If someone took advantage of the situation, he would be in danger. If his plan failed, he would have no choice but to snatch it by force, so he still had to increase his cultivation. After becoming an enlightened master, he could continue to cultivate most of the antique studies, such as the Heavenly Demonic Scripture, Mahavirokana's Immobility Scripture, Great Light Scripture, Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture, not to mention the life and death scripture. However, it seemed like these scriptures needed to be cultivated step by step and were difficult to master in a short period of time. It required thousands of years of accumulation. The one that could give him a pleasant surprise was that little beast. The little beast was weak and listless, like a frosted eggplant. He couldn't do anything about it. Although it was in his mind, it didn't come into contact with him. It was only when Zhang Xian absorbed the golden dragon's spiritual energy that there was a slight movement. Usually, Zhang Xian would be sick, as if he was asleep and awake at the same time. Zhang Xian was unable to tell how deep Zhang Xian was. Could it be that only a supreme spirit beast's spiritual sea could boost its spirit? After sitting quietly in the small courtyard for 3 days, a young girl knocked on the door of the small courtyard. Elder Fong invited him in. Chu Li strode to the Heaven's Punishment Hall. Inside the Heaven's Punishment Hall, Elder Fong sat on the armchair with one hand supporting her chin. Her blurred eyes fell on the spirit tiger's carcass. After Chu Li entered, she continued to stare blankly and was not in her thoughts. Ahem, temple leader. Chu Li coughed softly and interrupted her. Elder Fong gave him a sidelong glance and said faintly, Bailey Na, how long do you plan to hide? Chu Li Fist saluted and said, Temple leader, I have no other choice. If I go out now, Senior Guo will definitely find fault with me and take the opportunity to teach me a lesson. It's just a lesson. Elder Fong scoffed. It will happen sooner or later. You can't escape. Will Senior Guo and the others always stay in the church? Chu Li asked impatiently. Won't they have time to leave? They won't leave for the time being. Elder Fong shook her head and said, Unless the bishop cultivates a divine technique and becomes invincible. Sigh. There's no hope. There's only Chu Li. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. He was already used to saying his own name and even praised himself from time to time. That might not be the case. Elder Fong said. Chu Li laughed. Temple leader, do you believe that the bishop can defeat Chu Li? Elder Fong said. The bishop has lost to Chu Li too many times. However, it's different this time. The bishop cultivates a grandmaster's unique study. It's incomparable to the martial arts of this world. Moreover, Chu Li is the bishop's, not his heart. He's also the motivation for him to work hard. With such an opponent, the bishop will be able to cultivate the grandmaster's martial arts no matter how difficult it is. Chu Li nodded slowly. He was more curious about the unique study that Song Jifan cultivated. A disciple has violated the church's rules. Bring him back, Elder Fong said faintly. Chu Li said, Outside the mountain, inside the mountain. Elder Fong said, Yes. Chu Li took a deep breath. Elder Fong waved her hand, and a young lady in green fluttered over. She handed a dossier to Chu Li. Chu Li took the dossier and looked through it. He quickly finished flipping through it and nodded. All right, I'll go and capture him immediately. I'm just afraid that I'll encounter Senior Guo. You have to be flexible, Elder Fong said. Chu Li Fist saluted and turned to leave. After he left the Heaven's Punishment Hall, he walked along the north-south crosscut avenue in the west. The omniscient mirror quickly found the target, Jin Xianming. The omniscient mirror saw that Jin Xianming was drinking alone in a restaurant. He looked calm. This Jin Xianming was tall and burly. He had a long and narrow horse-like face that was covered with acne. His small eyes were exceptionally spirited, cold, and calm. Chu Li could tell at a glance that this person had a firm mind. Since he had violated the church's rules, he must have been prepared. Knowing that the people from the Heaven's Punishment Hall wanted to capture him, Chu Li used the omniscient mirror to look deeper. He immediately frowned. He did not expect this Jin Xianming to be so calculative. He should not underestimate anyone. He chose this place because he knew that the people from the Heaven's Punishment Hall wanted to capture him. The biggest possibility was that they would send him. However, there was another person sitting in the restaurant he was at, Guo Zhangjing. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. This Jin Xianming felt that perhaps the Bailin Na that he had transformed into would stay far away and not dare to enter the restaurant. It was very likely that someone would inform Bailin Na, or the Bailin Na that he had transformed into would go against the wind and enter the restaurant to capture him. At that time, Guo Zhangjing would definitely not let go of the opportunity. he would definitely deal with Bai Li Na before capturing him. Chu Li thought about it and walked to the restaurant. He shouted, "Jin Xianming, after you left the floating mountain, you raped and killed 2 innocent girls. This is a heinous crime. I, Bai Li Na, am here on the orders of the Heaven's Punishment Hall to capture you. If you resist, you will be killed without mercy. If you help Jin Xianming, you will be treated as the same." His voice shook the sky. Half of the floating mountain could hear him. Guozhangjing had already noticed Chu Li. He originally gathered his energy and wanted to kill Chu Li before he spoke. Even if Elder Fong asked, he could only say that it was an accident. He could not do anything to Chu Li. Only then would he vent his anger. When he was the Heaven's Punishment Hall leader, he was fair and just. However, after ascending to the Grand Master's boundary, his actions became more extreme. As he grew older, he became more headstrong and could not tolerate others' disobedience. Chapter 1806. As soon as Chu Li shouted, he helplessly stopped his attack. He frowned and remained silent. If he were to attack now, he would be interrupting the Heaven's Punishment Hall and breaking the rules. He would be making the entire Heaven's Punishment Hall his enemy. He knew the Heaven's Punishment Hall very well. Once someone obstructed the Heaven's Punishment Hall, that person would be the entire Heaven's Punishment Hall's enemy. They would capture the person and punish him severely. Moreover, there was a powerful treasure in the Heaven's Punishment Hall that would only be used as a last resort. He was not confident that he could defend against it. This was different from killing Bai Li Na out of the blue. Killing Bai Li Na out of the blue could be said to be an accident, and it was just a personal grudge. Killing Bai Li Na now would mean that Bai Li Na was carrying out a mission from the Heaven's Punishment Hall. Bai Li Na would be making the Heaven's Punishment Hall his enemy. Chu Li was already below the restaurant. He looked up at the sky and shouted, "Jin Xianming, show yourself. If you come out now and follow me back, I could be lenient with you. If you resist, and I do it myself, you will be punished according to the law." Jin Xianming was sitting in front of the window. He looked down at Chu Li and said, "I won't do anything. You just have to come up and bring me away." "Come down yourself," Chu Li shouted. Jin Xianming shook his head. "I'm drunk. I can't walk." Looks like you're not giving up. You're forcing me to attack now," Chu Li said coldly. He unsheathed his sword as he finished. Jin Xianming quickly glanced at Guozhangjing, who was drinking in the corner with his head lowered, and shook his head helplessly. Why did this arrogant and domineering celestial being change his temper today? He actually allowed Chu Li to yell at him from below, but he did not care at all. Guozhangjing glared at Jin Xianming. Jin Xianming could not help but shiver. He immediately understood that his intention had been seen through by Guozhangjing. Now the best thing to do was to go downstairs and leave. Otherwise, if he continued to tangle with Bai Li Na, he would definitely anger Guozhangjing, who would vent his anger on him. He shouted, "I'm coming down now." He took out a silver ingot and placed it on the table. He then flew out of the window and landed in front of Chu Li. Chu Li looked at Jin Xianming and said, "Are you Jin Xianming?" "That's right." Jin Xianming gritted his teeth. He knew that if he were to fall into the hands of the Heavenly Punishment Hall, it would be difficult for him to escape the fate of having his cultivation crippled. Therefore, he must not fall into their hands. It was a pity that the floating mountain was now sealed and he couldn't escape. The only thing he could hope for was to delay for a few more days. One more free and unfettered day was one more day. He couldn't bear to waste the days of leisurely drinking wine, and the taste of those beautiful women made him even more infatuated. Once he landed in the hands of the Heavenly Punishment Hall, he would never have the chance to touch women again. When he thought of this, he felt extreme hatred towards the Heavenly Punishment Hall, and boundless killing intent arose within him. Chu Li muttered, "Then let's go." "Bai Li Na, how dare you speak ill of Senior Gua?" Jin Xianming suddenly shouted. Chu Li could not help but laugh. "Do you think this will work? Don't waste your time." "Bai Li Na, are you saying that Senior Gua doesn't dare to stop you?" Jin Xianming snorted. Chu Li frowned as his killing intent rose. "You're looking for trouble." As soon as he finished speaking, he struck with his palm. Bang! The spiritual energy in the air condensed into a palm print. It was clear as if it was a real palm. It was the Heavenly King palm, and it hit Jin Xianming squarely. Jin Xianming spat out a mouthful of blood in the air. He hissed, "You with the surname Bailey, are you trying to silence me?" No matter how useless Senior Gua is, he's still a senior master of the Longevity Church. How can you be so rude? Chu shook his head and looked at Guozhang Jing, who had appeared beside him. He fist saluted. "Greetings, Senior Gua. You think that I don't dare to touch you?" Guozhang Jing said coldly. Chu smiled. "Senior Gua, don't tell me you didn't see that he's tried to provoke you on purpose so that he can escape? You know the Heavenly King palm?" Guozhang Jing asked. Chu nodded. "I cultivated it by chance. Unfortunately, I didn't get the unique Heavenly King technique, so I didn't get its essence. It's rare to cultivate the Heavenly King palm to this level without the unique Heavenly King technique. Coincidentally, I'm also slightly familiar with the Heavenly King palm. Let's learn from each other." As soon as he finished speaking, he did not wait for Chu Li to reply and struck with his palm. The Heavenly King palm gathered spiritual energy in the air and instantly formed an extremely realistic palm print. It was as fast as lightning and reached Chu Li in an instant. Chu Li used the Heavenly King palm as well. The two Heavenly King palms collided in the air. Chu Li flew backward and caught up with Jin Xianming, who was in the air. Chu Li spat out a mouthful of blood and hit Jin Xuanming's chest with the Heavenly King palm. Jin Xianming flew out again and spat out blood in the air. What a profound cultivation level. I'm impressed. Another palm. Guozhang Jing shouted. Bam! A green shadow flashed, and Elder Fong suddenly appeared in front of Chu Li. She pushed her palms forward and collided with the Heavenly King palm. She staggered 2 steps, and her face turned red for a while before returning to normal. She said coldly, "Senior Gua, do you know your crime for obstructing the Heaven's Punishment Hall's disciple?" "Oh." Gua Zhongjing's face darkened, and he said coldly, "You want to punish me? Elder Gua, do you admit that you're a disciple of the Longevity Sect?" Elder Fong asked. Guozhang Jing said slowly, "Of course I'm a disciple of the Longevity Sect. That's good. As the former Lord of the Heaven's Punishment Hall, you should know the rules of the Heaven's Punishment Hall, right?" Elder Fong scoffed. "Why, you want to cripple my martial arts?" Guozhang Jing sneered and said lightly, "Or palace punishment." He was familiar with the Longevity Sect's rules and naturally knew the punishment for raping and killing an innocent girl, crippling one's martial arts and the root of one's offspring. From then on, one would be an incomplete man and live a life worse than death. Elder Fong said, "There are no exception for the disciples of the Longevity Sect, including you, Senior Gua." Guozhang Jing was so angry that he laughed. He did not expect young Fan to have such courage and murderous intent. She hated him so much. Could this be a trap? A trap targeted at him? Elder Fong said lightly, "If Senior Gua doesn't want to be punished, that's easy. You just have to admit that you're no longer a disciple of the Longevity Sect." "Of course I'm a disciple of the Longevity Sect." Guozhang Jing shook his head and said, "However, it's impossible for me to be punished. Who said that I obstructed the Heaven's Punishment Hall's disciple? Did this guy escape?" As soon as he finished, he appeared in front of Jin Xianming in a flash. Jin Xianming was still flying in the air when he was suddenly pulled in front of Elder Fong. He was terrified. He had always been afraid of this moment. When it suddenly came, he realized that he was even more afraid. Guozhang Jing slammed his palm down, and Jin Xianming collapsed to the ground. Only his eyes were darting around, showing fear and pleading. Elder Fong frowned. Guozhang Jing chuckled and said, "As for Bailey Na, he was only sparring with the Heavenly King palm technique. His Heavenly King palm is quite proficient. It's a pity that he did not cultivate the supreme Heavenly King technique. In my opinion, it's better for him to cultivate it. After all, the Heavenly King Hall only exists in name." "Thank you for your concern, Senior Gua," Elder Fong said coldly. "However, Senior Gua, do you think you can get away just like that?" What kind of punishment is it to intentionally hurt a disciple of the Heaven's Punishment Hall? Guozhangjing's face darkened. He had already given Elder Fong a way out of this embarrassing situation. However, she insisted on going against him. Did she think that he was soft? Easy to bully. Chapter 1807. He used the Heavenly King Palm. Chu Li shouted, "How dare you? How dare you attack the temple leader?" As he finished, he stood in front of Elder Fong and lowered his body. He performed the sacrificial power and used the Heavenly King Palm. Once the Heavenly King Palm was used, it instantly condensed into a solid palm print and went against Guozhangjing's Heavenly King Palm. Bam! A muffled sound was heard. The two palm energies were evenly matched and both dispersed. Guozhangjing was surprised and immediately realized that Chu Li used the sacrificial power. He shook his head and said, "What a good subordinate." Again, he used the Heavenly King Palm again. This time, the Heavenly King Palm gathered the surrounding spiritual energy and instantly turned into a white jade palm print. It was crystal clear as if it was solid. Chu Li also used the Heavenly King Palm. His Heavenly King Palm absorbed the surrounding spiritual energy and turned into a solid palm print. However, it was not as solid as the white jade palm print. It was finally dispersed by the white jade palm print and continued flying towards Chu Li at an even faster speed. The Heavenly King Palm was very strange. The more it was obstructed, the faster it became. It was as if the resistance was turned into a driving force. Bam! Elder Fong countered with her palm and dispersed the white jade palm print. She took a step back and her expression changed. "Senior Gua, you're trying to kill me." Her internal organs were turned upside down and she felt like vomiting. She was already injured. Guozhangjing's palm was obviously trying to kill her. Guozhangjing shook his head and laughed. "You plotted against me, and I still have to be merciful. Senior Gua, are you going against the Heaven's Punishment Hall?" Elder Fong asked calmly. Guozhangjing was sensitive and immediately noticed something was wrong. Her words seemed to be luring him to say that he was going against the Heaven's Punishment Hall so that he could find an excuse to attack. He laughed coldly. "Why? Are you going to use a treasure weapon against me? If Senior Gua insists on going against the Heaven's Punishment Hall, then we'll have to use our treasure weapon," Elder Fong said in a low voice. "Ha!" Guozhangjing laughed. "I didn't expect young Fan to be so vicious. A woman's heart is the most vicious." Elder Fong suddenly smiled. "So what Senior Gua is trying to say is that you want to go against the Heaven's Punishment Hall?" "Not bad." Guozhangjing took a deep breath and slowly said, "I would like to experience your methods, little Fan." He knew that everything would be fine as long as he said some soft words, but he just couldn't say it. His rationality told him to say soft words, but his emotions made it impossible for him to say them. He had to be tough to the end. He didn't believe that he couldn't control a junior. Chu Li scoffed. "Hall Master, he must be trying to kill us." Elder Fong took out a jade pendant and flashed it at Guozhangjing. "Order of the Heaven's Punishment Hall." Guozhangjing's face darkened. Elder Fong scoffed. "Since Elder Gua insists on going against our Heavenly Punishment Hall, we can only use the hall order. Don't blame me for being ruthless." Oomph. Suddenly, a snort sounded. The jade pendant in Elder Fong's hand immediately flew out. Elder Fong's expression changed drastically as she reached out to snatch it back. However, the jade pendant shot to the side at an incredible speed. Chu Li pushed his palm out. Bang! The Heavenly King Palm accurately struck the jade pendant. The speed of the jade pendant slowed down, allowing Elder Fong to catch up to it. Elder Fong reached out to grab it, but was blocked by an invisible force. Elder Fong then flew backward and spat out a mouthful of blood in the air. He glared at the void with hatred. An old man appeared in the void. His face was rosy and his eyebrows were snow white. He was tall and thin and had an aura of an immortal. He gently took off the Heaven's Punishment Hall order and shook his head with a sigh. "Why do you have to do this? We're all brothers in the church. Don't hurt our harmony," Chu Li said hatefully. "Elder Gua, you don't hurt our harmony when you flaunt your power. Do you think we hurt our harmony by fighting? Aren't you celestials being too domineering? We're not people you can bully as you please. Yo, you're not young anymore, but you're still so courageous. How rare. The old man smiled as he sized him up and shook his head. It's just that your cultivation level is slightly lacking. I have a set of the unique Heavenly King technique here. Take it and learn it. As soon as he finished speaking, he casually tossed a thin booklet out from his sleeve. Chu Li was stunned. He then pushed his palm forward. Smack! The thin booklet was pushed back. The old man took the booklet in shock and looked at Chu Li in surprise. You don't want to learn the unique Heavenly King technique? If you have the unique Heavenly King technique, the power of your Heavenly King palm will increase by a few times or even 10 times. With your Heavenly King palm's level of attainment, you'll immediately become a first-class master. Chu Li said in a low voice, the church's antique studies. I don't need to learn from others. You're quite ambitious. The old man was not angry. It was as if he would not be angry no matter what. He shook his head. There won't be a next time if you miss this opportunity. You should know that you're now a disciple of the Heaven's Punishment Hall. Don't even think about learning the unique Heavenly King technique. This is the antique study of the Heavenly King Palace. It will never be leaked to outsiders. Chu Li said, forget it then. Don't you think it's a pity? The old man asked with a smile. Elder Chung, you don't have to worry about it. I'll think of a way to let him learn the unique Heavenly King technique. Elder Fong landed far away and wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth. She said hatefully, Elder Chung is really ruthless. The old man in front of her was Chung Hao. He was also a senior of the Church of Longevity and the former temple leader of the Heavenly King Palace. The 4 people sent by founding Master Song to guard the Church of Longevity were the former temple leaders of the 4 temples. They had profound cultivation levels and knew the Church of Longevity inside out. Logically, they were the most suitable. Unfortunately, these people were extremely annoying. They were arrogant and looked down on everyone. It was as if the current temple leaders were people who did not work hard and needed guidance from them when they did something wrong. All of them wanted to be the Grand Temple leader. Chung Hao chuckled. How can I learn from such a vicious little girl like you if I don't deal some heavy blows? Elder Chung, I've learned something. Bailey now, let's go. Elder Fong said hatefully. Temple leader. Chu Li frowned and looked at Jin Xinming. What about this guy? Take him away. Elder Fong said. Chu Li nodded. He glanced at Chung Hao and Guizhong Jing. He went to Jin Xinming and carried him away. Chung Hao and Guizhong Jing watched them leave. Junior brother Gua, this little guy is quite courageous. Chung Hao smiled. He dares to risk his life during crucial moments. He's not afraid of anything. He's just a hothead. He won't amount to much. Guizhong Jing said coldly. Chung Hao nodded. Guizhong Jing said, if you didn't come this time, I would have been defeated by the fangirl. Looks like old people like us are really annoying. Chung Hao shook his head and sighed. Old people are annoying too. In my opinion, they should be taught a lesson. Guizhong Jing sneered. If we don't teach them a lesson, they'll always think they're great. They don't know that they're frogs at the bottom of a well. They're not worth mentioning at all. Chu Li and Elder Fong carried Jin Xinming back to the basilica. Chu Li threw Jin Xinming aside. Elder Fong said, why didn't you take the secret manual? I don't care. Chu Li scoffed. If I took it, I'd be embarrassing the Heaven's Punishment Hall. Well done. Elder Fong nodded in satisfaction. I can give you a chance to enter the secret treasury. You can choose a secret manual or a treasure in the secret treasury. Chu Li was overjoyed. His efforts were not in vain. He knew that Elder Fong had great authority and could let people into the secret warehouse. That was why he had been trying his best to please her. Now that he had gotten this chance, he might be able to encounter the heavenly astral jade stamp. Chapter 1808. Elder Fong saw his happy face and could not help but shake her head with a smile. But don't have too much hope. The treasures in the secret vault are not peerless and have limited effects on improving your martial arts. If you want to compete with celestial beings, you still have to rely on your own hard work. No treasures? Chu Li was stunned. Elder Fong said, there is, but it is not as rare as you think. It is not worth paying too much attention to. Is there a secret manual? Chu Li asked. There is no secret manual like the supremacy of the heavenly king, Elder Fong said. Don't worry, I will find a way to get a manual for you to practice the supremacy of the heavenly king. If the palace leader finds it difficult, then forget it. It's not like I have to cultivate it, Chuli lied. Elder Fong pursed her lips and chuckled. She glanced at him with her charming big eyes. Really? Chuli smiled awkwardly. Elder Fong snorted. Take it. Go and pick your treasures. She took out a silver plate and tossed it to him. Chuli hurriedly took it with both hands and looked at it carefully. On one side of the palm-sized silver medallion was drawn the image of the heavenly punishment hall, and on the other side was the word Fan. The strokes were elegant, and it was obvious that Elder Fan had personally made it. Return the order when you return. Elder Fong waved her hand. Go, go. Chuli gave a fist salute. Thank you, Palace Leader. You have the ageless longevity technique. Those injuries shouldn't be a problem, right? Elder Fong suddenly asked. Chuli hurriedly said, Don't worry, Temple Leader. It's just a small injury. It's nothing to worry about. I'll be able to recover very soon. All right, go ahead. Elder Fong turned around and disappeared with a leap. Chuli stood still and smiled. He thought quickly. The operation this time had created a deep rift between the celestial beings and the Changsheng denomination. As long as he could find a chance to expand the rift in the future, the disciples of the Changsheng denomination would definitely hate the four celestial beings even more and even force them to leave. However, the possibility of that happening was not very high. It was more likely that the four celestials would attack and seriously injure him. If Song Ji-fan managed to cultivate a godly technique at this time, there might be a great battle, and he would be able to see Song Ji-fan's actual situation. He wanted to continue widening the rift, even if he had to sacrifice his identity as a Bailey Na. He lowered his head to look at the silver token, and his smile deepened. Could it be that he would be able to obtain the Heavenly Star Jade stamp so easily as he wished? When he thought of this, he was in high spirits. He strode to the secret cave he had been to before and knocked on the stone door. The mountain where the cave was located was lush with spiritual energy. Although it was not as good as a mortal attraction mountain, compared to the outside world, the floating mountain was truly a rare holy land for cultivation. 10 years of cultivation here was equivalent to 20 to 30 years in the outside world. That was also the reason why the Changshin sect was so powerful. Rumble. The stone door slowly opened. A bald, burly old man who looked like a butcher walked out and frowned at him. What's the matter? Chuli flashed his silver badge. He was curious as to why the person here had changed. Originally, it was an old man in linen clothes, but now it was a burly old man who looked like a butcher. However, he did not ask much. The bald elder stretched out his hand, and Chuli handed over the silver token. The bald elder took a few glances and waved his hand. Come in. Don't touch anything. You can only choose one item. You can't take more than one. Chuli nodded. The two of them entered a cave and slowly walked in. The deeper they went, the more the omniscient mirror was blocked, and he could not see through it. It was obvious that it was a powerful treasure, or else it would not have been able to block his omniscient mirror. After walking for about a mile, they arrived in front of a bronze door again. The bald elder stuck the silver token on the bronze door, and the silver token was immediately sucked in. Rumble. The thick and heavy bronze door quickly opened. Come in, the bald elder said. He took the lead and stepped into the bronze door, and Chuli followed closely behind. They first came to a small stone house. There were 3 cupboards in the house, and there were a few small boxes on the shelves. There are some rare treasures in here, and most of them are of unknown origin. You can take a look and see what you like. Who knows, you might be able to pick an item that is fated with you, the bald elder said. Chuli nodded and came in front of a cupboard. He opened all the small boxes on it, and there were stones inside. Some of them were as black as ink, some were as blue as the sky, and some were as red as blood. Chuli's eyes suddenly lit up. He saw something familiar. There was a star stone. He pointed at the stone that was as black as ink. This is spirit fusing stone. The bald elder said faintly, I will only answer this one question. The rest is up to you to decide. This old man can only tell you this. Everything here is a treasure. You just have to see which one is more suitable for you. Chu Li slowly nodded. He recognized this spirit-fusing stone. When the Celestials attacked Fairy Attraction Mountain, they used this spirit-fusing stone to break the formation. It was indeed very effective. While he was praising it, he was also secretly happy. It seemed that not every Celestial could use a strange technique like the Deva shedding technique. His gaze wandered on the stone that was as red as blood. Although he did not know what it was, he could feel the aura of the vermilion bird. It was obviously related to the vermilion bird. Moreover, the little beast in the void of his mind opened its eyes and was eager to make a move on this stone. Chu Li revealed a troubled expression. This was because he also recognized another stone, the Star Stone. If he could obtain the Star Stone, even if he could not obtain the Heavenly Star Insight technique, the Big Dipper compass could absorb the Star Stone and raise the level of the Heavenly Star Insight technique. It would be of great help to him. Should he give it to the little beast or the Heavenly Star Insight technique? He was in a dilemma. The bald elder said in a low voice, "Since you're in a dilemma, let's put it down first. Let's take a look elsewhere. Maybe there'll be something you like." "Yes." Chu Li slowly nodded. He decided to think about it first and see if he could find the Heavenly Astral Jade Stamp. If he could find it, he naturally did not need the Star Stone and did not need to be in a dilemma. After the two of them left this stone room, they went to another stone room at the side. It was similar to the previous one, except that there were secret manuals on the shelves. Chu Li casually flipped through them, shook his head, and put them down. These secret manuals were incomplete. None of them were complete. The value of these incomplete manuals was not that great. Moreover, in terms of martial arts, he did not think of himself as the second best. In fact, he did not even lose to Song Jifan. He just lacked the time to improve. In the future, he would naturally reach a higher level of attainment. For example, the Heavenly Demon Scripture, Earth Matrix, and Reincarnation Scripture, and the like would reach a higher level. Its power would be extremely shocking. The more profound the martial arts, the stronger the power and the stronger the after effects. There were 3 treasured weapons in the third stone room. There was a jade pendant and 2 bronze orders. The jade pendant could calm one's mind and was called the Calming Heart Jade. The bronze order could protect one's body and was called the Heart Protection Plate. It was as if one had cultivated the cross training technique. It could protect one's heart from being severely injured. The other bronze order was called the Death Exemption Plate. It could be used to die in place of death once. Chu Li's gaze turned to the last Death Exemption Plate. The bronze order glowed with a purplish gold color. There was no copper rust at all, and there seemed to be a faint brilliance flowing on it. He wanted to see through the structure of this bronze order and what inscriptions were carved on it. Perhaps he could use the Heavenly Astral Insight skill to see through it and make it himself. Then, he could give one to everyone around him. Unfortunately, there was an invisible force on the bronze order that blocked the omniscient mirror. He could not see through it. The bald elder looked at his expression and seemed to be tempted by the Death Exemption Plate. He said, "This can indeed avoid death. Someone has tested it before. It's not a legend." Chu Li slowly nodded. "Take this Death Exemption Plate?" the bald elder asked. Chapter 1809. Breaking into the floating mountain to rob this place. The bald elder chuckled and shook his head. "Impossible. Everything is possible." Chu Li said, "I've lived for half my life, and I know this the best. Who would have thought that I could enter the Longevity Church and find a right path to cultivate?" That's true." The bald elder smiled. "All right, if someone really managed to break into the floating mountain, that person must be someone extraordinary. If they can't be defeated, this treasure vault will disappear." "Disappear?" Chu Li was surprised. "Will explode?" The bald elder shook his head. "It won't explode. It will disappear from this world." Chu Li looked around in confusion and asked, "Could this be the Grandmaster's boundary?" "You're quite knowledgeable." The bald elder shook his head. "It's not the Outland, but it's not this world either. This is a mysterious place where outsiders won't be able to break in. Don't worry." Chu Li nodded. It seemed like he could not rob it by force. But what if he did it now? He was suddenly tempted. If he could recover his martial arts now, he could rob the things here. Even if he had to give up his identity as Bailey Na, it was worth it to rob these treasures. Suppressing his eagerness, he continued to walk inside. The fourth stone room contained some armor and treasured clothing, but Chu Li was not interested. He had the supreme, indestructible body of Vajra and Shao Qi, and the rest had protective divine techniques too, so they did not need treasured clothing. Compared to the divine astral jade badge, they were not worth mentioning. The fifth stone room contained some pills. There were pills that could increase one's lifespan, pills that could cleanse one's body, and pills that could bring the dead back to life. The sixth stone room contained weapons. Chu Li found a pair of sun and moon wheels in the weapon room. He looked at the sun and moon wheels and turned to look at the bald elder. These are the sun and moon wheels, right? Yes, they are. The bald elder did not answer one question like he said before. He continued, the secret weapons of the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture are mysterious. This pair of sun and moon wheels is the legendary weapon of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. It's even more powerful. Chu Li became more envious as he stared at the sun and moon wheels. He could feel the mysterious aura circulating around the sun wheel and the moon wheel, which seemed to be resonating with his Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture. Can I pick it up and take a look? Chu Li asked. The bald old man hesitated for a moment before nodding slowly. Chu Li slowly reached out his hand and slowly approached the sun and moon chakram. He was inexplicably excited. Suddenly, an explosion sounded in his mind. The ethereal Sanskrit sound lingered in his ears. His mood was inexplicably calm like water. Joy flowed in his heart, as if he was in a state of enlightenment. He was extremely familiar with this sort of joy. When he first cultivated the Dharma, he often had this sort of state of sudden enlightenment, and every time he cultivated the Dharma, his Dharma would improve greatly. Red lotuses were spat out from Ksitigarbha Chakravarti's mouth. Slowly, Ksitigarbha Chakravarti opened his eyes and formed a strange hand seal. In reality, he couldn't help but form a seal with his hands and lightly touch the wheel of sun and moon. Mu mu mu, a Buddhist incantation rang in his ears. Suddenly, the wheels of sun and moon shone brightly. The wheels of sun and moon shone with white light, while the wheels of moon shone with black light. The black and white lights intertwined in the air and formed a pattern similar to Tai Chi then. It slowly floated towards Chu Li's forehead. Chu Li's forehead seemed to have lit up for a moment. A golden light shot out and shone on the black and white lights. The three lights collided and suddenly burst into a blinding light. No one dared to look at it directly. When the bald old man squinted to look at his surroundings, he realized that the white light, black light, and golden light had all disappeared. The sun and moon chakram had returned to normal. Chu Li stood there holding the chakram in a daze. His eyes were filled with confusion, as if he did not know what had happened. The bald old man asked in a low voice, Bailey Na, what happened? Chu Li turned his head and looked at him blankly. What happened? What happened to me? You don't know. The bald old man stared at Chu Li, trying to figure out what he was thinking. Chu Li shook his head and frowned as he recalled. This sun and moon chakram seemed to have some kind of power that engulfed me. After that, I didn't know anything. It was like a dream. How strange. Looks like you've gained a fortune for nothing. The bald old man scoffed. There were many people who came to see the sun and moon chakram, but he was the only one who could trigger such a strange phenomenon. This was a unique fate that cannot be forced. Moreover, he did not plan to be a bad person. He could just pretend that he did not see anything. He might even be able to form a good relationship with Bailey Na and feel that he was not an ordinary person. Chu Li smiled. Is it really a fortune? I'm afraid it's not a fortune, but a disaster. That's hard to say. The bald old man nodded slowly. The sun and moon chakram is the secret weapon of the reincarnation temple. The reincarnation temple is different from other Buddhist sections. They are secretive and unscrupulous. Chu Li sighed. Unfortunately, I'm muddle-headed. His expression was one of confusion and worry, completely concealing his joy. He had obtained the complete Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture. The inheritance of the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture was on this sun and moon chakram and not the chakram pagoda. Chuli could not wait to leave and go to the reincarnation pagoda to verify the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture inheritance that he had just obtained. That was because this inheritance hid the secret of the reincarnation pagoda and its true usage. The bald old man asked, "Can we continue to look?" Chuli replied, "I heard that we have the heavenly astral jade stamp here. I wonder if it's true." He decided that if he really had the heavenly astral jade stamp, he would give up his identity as Bailey Na and escape from here. He would not hesitate even if the four great celestial beings were to hunt him down. The heavenly astral jade stamp was too important. The heavenly astral jade stamp? The bald old man thought for a while and shook his head. That's the hidden treasure of immortality. It's not here. Chuli frowned. The hidden treasure of immortality? Is it different from this place? Of course it's different. This is an ordinary hidden treasure. The bald old man looked impressed. The hidden treasure of immortality is the true hidden treasure. It's a pity that I'm not fated to see it. Chuli asked, "How can I enter the hidden treasure of immortality?" "You'll need the bishop's order and the approval of the 4 great hall masters and the 6 grand elders. Only then you're qualified to enter." The bald old man said, "Only the hall master's order won't do." "I see." Chuli looked disappointed. Then he became spirited. There were so many treasures in this hidden treasure. If he had such a harvest, how amazing would the hidden treasure of immortality be? There might be even more amazing gains. The bald old man smiled. "Although you're old, you're a genius. You're also the favorite of the Heavenly King Palace. You'll definitely have a chance to make a great contribution and enter the hidden treasure of immortality." Chuli was fascinated. The hidden treasure of immortality. All right, there are only these treasures. Which one do you want? The bald old man asked. Chuli thought for a while and finally chose the Starstone. With the Starstone, he could advance the heavenly astral insight technique and crack the secret of the heart of Azura pattern to restrain Azura. Azura was a disaster. Once their weakness was found, it would definitely benefit the world. The heavenly astral jade stamp was in the hidden treasure of immortality. He knew that it was not easy to get it. He would need to contribute enough, plan well, and time. The Starstone was more important. As for the little beast's desire for the red stone, he would have to wait until the next time. As the thought flashed through his mind, he said slowly, "I choose the blue stone." Chapter 1810. Both of them arrived at the stone room from before. The bald elder took out the star stone and passed it to him. He sighed. "This stone doesn't have much use. It's just beautiful. You must have been obsessed to choose it." Chuli smiled. "Yes, I didn't want to give it to a friend because it's beautiful." "Oh." The bald elder came to a sudden realization. He looked at Chuli and smiled. "I didn't expect you to be so particular about this at your age. You're getting younger, haha." He patted Chuli's shoulder with a look of admiration. Chuli chuckled and took the starstone. He slowly kept it in his pocket and suppressed the excitement in his heart. He could feel the omniscient mirror in his mind. It was flickering nonstop, as if it was about to jump out of his mind. It could not wait to devour the starstone. He did not suppress it forcefully and revealed a hint of it. The bald elder was sharp. He laughed. "Looks like you're still an infatuated person." He thought Chuli was so excited because he could please his lover. He seemed to see his lover smile and could not help but laugh. However, infatuated people were usually trustworthy. They were not bad people. He liked Chuli even more. He smiled. "All right, I won't hold you up. Go." Chuli Fizz saluted. "Thank you." Both of them strode out of the cave. Chuli stepped out of the stone door and turned to look. The cave was already hidden. The stone door and the surrounding stone walls were one. It would have been difficult to discover it if he did not have the omniscient mirror. Seeing this hidden treasure, he knew how profound the Changsheng denomination's foundation was, which was beyond his imagination. This must be the foundation of a big sect that had existed for thousands of years. If he could enter the hidden treasure of longevity, he would not hesitate to sacrifice his identity as Bailey Na. After entering the hidden treasure, he would fight for it. Thinking of this, he could not wait to return to his courtyard. He sat cross-legged on the bed in his bedroom. He placed the star stone on his forehead and activated the heavenly star insight skill. Under the observation of the omniscient mirror, he could clearly see a flash on his forehead. A faint light flashed and disappeared as if the stars were blinking. Then, the star stone turned into a blue light and went into his forehead. He quickly focused on the void in his mind. After the blue light entered his mind, it shot directly onto the omniscient mirror. Both the heavenly star insight technique and the omniscient mirror flowed endlessly. The two of them merged into one and were indistinguishable from one another. Observation was performed while deduction was performed, and deduction was performed while observation was performed. The blue light flickered on the surface of the mirror. He felt that after an hour, the blue light gradually dimmed, as if it had been completely absorbed by the mirror, leaving only a trace. In the end, this trace was also absorbed, leaving nothing behind. The omniscient mirror returned to normal, brighter, and more transparent than before. Other than that, there were no other changes. Looking at the omniscient mirror, Chu Li was eager to have a try. So he thought about one thing and guessed which celestial being in the Changshan sect was stronger and posed the greatest threat to him. As soon as he thought of it, a person appeared in the omniscient mirror. Chu Li scrutinized the man. He had thick eyebrows, big eyes, and a pair of bright and piercing eyes that carried the curiosity of a child. He was tall and slender, like a cheetah. His slender body contained an explosive power that no one dared to underestimate. Chu Li had never seen this person before, but he was clearly reflected in his mind. It was amazing. Moreover, this person seemed to have noticed that someone was spying on him. He raised his thick eyebrows and scanned his surroundings as if he wanted to see Chu Li through the omniscient mirror. Chu Li's heart skipped a beat. He retracted the heavenly star insight technique and the omniscient mirror. He was curious about this person's identity. He looked young, but appearance was the most difficult thing for the Changshan sect disciples to rely on. They could not determine the age of the Changshan sect disciples through appearance, just like Elder Fong and Song Jifan. There was a knock on the door. He got up and went to the courtyard. When he opened the door, Lu Jun was standing outside. Chu Li smiled and closed fist saluted. Lu Jun said, "I heard that you fought with Senior Gua and the others." Chu Li nodded. Lu Jun sized him up. "Are you hurt?" "Just a small injury." Chu Li said, "Fortunately, the temple leader helped me. Elder Fong is really daring." Lu Jun praised. "After so long, only Elder Fong dares to fight a celestial being. How satisfying." Chu Li smiled. "Everyone knows about it." "Everyone knows." Lu Jun said, "Everyone is praising you." Chu Li nodded. "Everyone must be saying that I'm stupid and that there's something wrong with my brain." Lu Jun chuckled and waved his hand. "Don't care about their gossip. Be careful. Don't let Senior Gua and the others get anything on you. Otherwise, they'll kill you." Chu Li said, "I'm going to ask the bishop for permission to leave the mountain." That's a good idea." Lu Jun quickly nodded. "I think the bishop will agree. If he stayed on the floating mountain, Gua Zhongjing and the others would definitely find a chance to teach him a lesson. Next time, they would be more severe and might even kill. We have a total of 4 celestial beings on the floating mountain, right?" Chu Li asked. "What do they look like?" "There are 4. Lu Jun nodded. "2 young and 2 old, but the one who looks younger is older." "Who is this?" Chu Li drew a face on the ground. It was the face he saw in the omniscient mirror. Song Sizu, the original lord of the Tianhua Palace. Lu Jun lowered his voice. "I heard that he's the most powerful among the 4 celestial beings. However, he's been in seclusion ever since he arrived. We rarely see him." Chu Li nodded thoughtfully. The lord of the Tianhua Palace. He had heard of the Tianhua Palace in the Longevity Church. There was the Heavenly King Palace, the God of Blood Palace, the Righteous Palace, the Heaven's Punishment Hall, and finally the Tianhua Palace. The next day, Chu Li reported to Elder Fong that he wanted to leave the floating mountain. He wanted to travel down the mountain and see the situation outside. Elder Fong immediately understood his intention. He wanted to avoid the celestial beings. She agreed without hesitation. Chuli left the floating mountain the next day. He did not go to Goddess Attraction Mountain immediately. He first walked around the floating mountain. He faintly felt that someone was following behind him. The omniscient mirror quickly deduced the person's location. It was Guozhang Jing. He had been hiding in the void and silently followed behind him. Chuli frowned. He could feel Guozhang Jing's murderous intent. It was obvious that he wanted to kill him secretly. As the former lord of the heavenly ruler palace of the longevity sect, he was so stubborn and narrow-minded. None of the celestial beings he came into contact with were magnanimous, broad-minded, or even benevolent. Perhaps such celestial beings would not descend to the world. He suddenly turned to look at the void. It was where Guozhang Jing was. He fist saluted. "What brings you here, Senior Gua?" Guozhang Jing slowly appeared. The brilliance around him was restrained. He sized Chuli up. "You're a little strange." Chuli said, "Senior Gua, you don't have to find an excuse to kill me. Just do it. There are no outsiders here. No one will know even if you kill me. I know that the Heaven's Punishment Hall has a secret skill that allows one to leave a message before death," Guozhang Jing said. Chuli frowned. "Then what does Senior Gua mean? Does he want me to leave a message for the bishop and die in vain?" "Bailey, nah. If you don't want to die, there's a way," Guozhang Jing said. Chuli said, "Senior Gua, please speak your mind." Chapter 1811. "What is it?" Chuli asked. "A Yinming grass," Guozhang Jing said. Chuli asked, "Celestials need spirit herbs too? Who said that celestials don't need spirit herbs?" Guozhang Jing said, "Celestials value spirit herbs more. Do you know about the Yinming grass?" "I don't know. I've never heard of it," Chuli answered honestly. He knew about the Yinming grass. Many spirit herbs were imprinted in his mind. However, compared to what he knew, there were thousands of spirit herbs in the 100,000 Hills. It was impossible for him to know all of them. He could only recognize some of them. Many of the spirit herbs were poisonous. Anyone who got close to them would die. That was why it was dangerous to pick them. Guozhang Jing took out a piece of paper and flicked it. The paper fluttered towards him, and Chuli reached out to take it. He felt a jolt in his palm, and a strong force came from the paper, almost injuring him. He quickly shook his hand with all his might, desperately trying to dissolve the inner force. Guozhang Jing smiled faintly. "Bailey Na, you're quite capable. Your comprehension is high. Unfortunately, you joined the longevity sect for too long. Your achievements are limited." Chuli said, "I believe that I can catch up. It's good to have such thoughts." Guozhang Jing nodded. "Have you seen it?" Chuli opened the paper and glanced at it. He kept it in his pocket. "Where can I pick it?" "You'll see it once you enter the 100,000 Hills." Guozhang Jing said, "There's no need to go deeper. You're not an enlightened master or a celestial. The danger is low. Just don't be greedy." Chuli said, "You can send any disciple of the Church of Light to handle such a matter. Why must I go?" "You're smarter," Guozhang Jing said. The 100,000 Hills was a forbidden area. The disciples of the longevity sect would most likely die. Although he hated Chu Li and wanted to kill him, he did not want to kill the other disciples who did not offend him. After all, he was a disciple too. Chuli nodded. "All right, I'll go." "Very well," Guozhang Jing smiled. As long as he could pick the Yinming grass, he would spare his life. Chuli said, "What do you need the Yinming grass for, Senior Gua?" "You don't have to worry about it," Guozhang Jing scoffed. Chuli nodded. He had already seen through the thoughts that flashed through Guozhang Jing's mind. He wanted to concoct a type of medicine that would allow him to advance to the next level. The reason he descended to the mortal world this time was for the Yinming grass. Guozhang Jing said, "If you can bring back the Yinming grass, the old man will reward you handsomely." "What's the reward?" Chuli asked. Guozhang Jing knew that if there was a reward, there would be a brave man. He could not blindly force him. If he wanted him to risk his life, he would need a reward that would move him. He smiled faintly and said, "How about the supreme heavenly king art? Ultimate heavenly king technique?" Chuli was stunned. Guozhang Jing slowly said, "If you can bring back the Yinming grass, I will reward you with the heavenly king supreme skill. I always keep my word." "All right." Chuli nodded vigorously, revealing an excited expression. Chuli heaved a sigh of relief as he watched Gua Zhongjing merge into the void. The most helpless step was to kill Gua Zhongjing, but it would be too easy to get into trouble and expose Bailey Na's identity. If Bailey Na's identity was really exposed because of Gua Zhongjing, it would really be a loss for a small gain, and the loss would outweigh the gain. He still had to use Bailey Na's identity to enter the longevity treasure. The omniscient mirror observed his surroundings and found nothing out of the ordinary. Only then did he use his light body technique and galloped away. Along the way, he was not in a hurry to use the void diversion technique. He first used his light body technique and headed towards Chongming Town. It seemed like he was returning to his old lair in the outskirts of Chongming Town. A day later, he returned to Goddess Attraction Mountain in a flash. It was evening, and the setting sun illuminated Goddess Attraction Mountain in a rosy color. It was beautiful and moving. Chuli looked at the surrounding scenery and felt a sense of security. Through the omniscient mirror, he saw the three women, Master Zhou Dunley, senior brother Dong Jinshin, and another tall and handsome young man. They were sitting in a gazebo by the cliff and talking with Dong Jinshin. Outside the gazebo were three green pines that stood proudly in the strong wind blowing from the cliff. Chuli activated the omniscient mirror and directly observed the mind of Dong Jinshin and the tall and handsome young man. He immediately understood their identity. It was Pang Hui's grandson, Pang Shiji. Chuli shook his head and sighed. In the end, Master still brought Pang Shiji back to Goddess Attraction Mountain. He entered the basilica to greet Zhou Dunley. Zhou Dunley's face was glowing, and his energy was at its peak. The previous battle at Goddess Attraction Mountain had made its status even more respected. It was as stable as a rock, and there was no need to worry about anyone coming to cause trouble. He was relieved of one of his worries. He no longer had to worry that Dong Jinshin would fall from Goddess Attraction Mountain. With the foundation laid this time, Dong Jinshin could be worry-free for the next 100 years. After 100 years, another genius might appear and restore Goddess Attraction Mountain to its former glory. Chuli gave a fist salute and smiled. Master, is there any good news? Go and see Shiji. Zhou Dunley smiled. Remember, don't kill him. Chuli smiled. Master, why are you so sure that I will kill him? Based on your temperament, you must nip the danger in the bud. Zhou Dunley scoffed. He is the grandson of my old friend. I have already promised my old friend that I will take good care of Shiji. Don't make me break my promise. Chuli said, even if he is really in danger, I won't kill him. Before he has the intention to kill, you can't kill him, Zhou Dunley said. Consider it my request to you. Chuli smiled helplessly. Master, you don't agree? Zhou Dunley asked. Chuli sighed. Since Master has spoken, I can only do as you say. Don't say one thing, but mean another. Attack him secretly, Zhou Dunley said. Chuli sighed again and nodded. Zhou Dunley smiled. Very well, I only have one thing to ask before I leave. Since you have agreed, I have nothing else to worry about. Master, are you going to ascend to heaven? Chuli frowned. Wait a little longer. Jinshin's current cultivation level is still insufficient. Zhou Dunley shook his head. Chuli sighed in relief. Although Zhou Dunley could return even if he ascended to heaven, the number of times he could come down every year was limited. It was inevitable that he would feel melancholy. Ever since he joined Goddess Attraction Mountain, Zhou Dunley had treated him very well and helped him without reservation. Zhou Dunley said, Go and meet your wives. They're all good ladies. Don't let them down. Chuli gave a fist salute and left. After speaking with Xiao Qi and the other two ladies, he went to the gazebo next to the cliff. The two were chatting enthusiastically against the strong wind. Seeing Chuli coming, Dong Jinshin was overjoyed. Junior brother, come and meet Brother Pang. Chuli stepped into the gazebo and smiled. Pang Shiji got up to greet him. He gave a fist salute solemnly. Brother Chu's name is well known. Chuli waved his hand and smiled. It's just an empty reputation. Brother Pang, you don't have to be so polite here. Just treat this as your own home. Master and your ancestor are best friends. We are not outsiders. Yes. Pang Shiji smiled. I never treat myself as a guest. As long as Brother Chu and Brother Dong don't mind me for being presumptuous. Dong Jianxin waved his hand. All right, you two don't have to be so polite. Sit down and talk. Junior brother, Brother Pang, is indeed a genius in cultivation. I am far inferior to him. Chu pretended to be all ears. Dong Jianxin then told him about Pang Shiji's powerful points. He was born with a weak physique and was almost unable to cultivate. It was only 3 years ago that he suddenly improved. Because he ate a strange fruit, his aptitude was peerless, and his cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds. Chapter 1812. Chu looked at Pang Shiji with a faint smile. His eyes were like lightning, as if he could see through Pang Shiji's internal organs. Fortunately, Pang Shiji's soul power was no different from ordinary people. If that wasn't the case, he would have suspected that Pang Shiji was like him, a reincarnated person with innate wisdom. He said the same thing to others. Because he ate a strange fruit, his aptitude suddenly increased. After the spiritual aperture was opened, his comprehension increased, and then he advanced by leaps and bounds to reach this point. It sounded like Pang Shiji was the same as him. But now it seemed that he was pretending to eat the strange fruit, but Pang Shiji really ate it. Otherwise, his body would not be so strong, like a spirit beast body. Naturally, his cultivation would advance by leaps and bounds. Such aptitude was indeed enviable. If he had such aptitude, coupled with a life and death scripture and a strong soul, he would have become an enlightened master long ago and would not have to go through so many setbacks and torments. Pang Shiji felt weak under Chu Li's cold gaze. He felt breathless, as if his whole body was bound, unable to breathe, like a piece of meat on the anvil that could only be dealt with. This feeling was terrible, but also very helpless. He knew that the reputation of Chu Li was not a fluke. If he fought with Chu Li, he would not be able to get close to him. Junior brother. Dong Jianxin saw Pang Shiji's pale face. Although he did not feel anything, he guessed the reason. Junior brother could subtly control the enlightened master's field, so he was like this. Although Pang Shiji's aptitude was top-notch, after all, his cultivation level was not enough. He had just reached the Grandmaster's boundary and was still a long way off from Dong Jianxin, let alone junior brother. Chu Li smiled and retracted his gaze. His blue eyes slowly returned to black and white. Really good aptitude, an enviable and admirable aptitude. Congratulations. Pang Shiji forced a smile. Chu Li turned his head and smiled. Senior brother personally went to pick up Brother Pang? Yes. Dong Jianxin nodded. Master gave the order, so I personally went to the Great One Palace. Fortunately, the Great One Palace was very easy to talk to and did not make things difficult for Brother Pang. They did not fight. Chu Li smiled. They are tactful. Pang Shiji took a few deep breaths and regained his composure. He smiled and said, "This is all thanks to Brother Chu's great reputation. Otherwise, the palace wouldn't have let him go. After all, this little brother's aptitude has improved." Chu Li nodded and said, "The Great One Palace has a deep foundation and many good things. It'll be a pity to part ways with them." Dong Jianxin smiled and said, "What's the use of having a deep foundation? Could it compare to our Goddess Attraction Mountain?" Chu Li could not help but laugh. "That's true. In that case, Brother Pang will be a disciple of Goddess Attraction Mountain from now on? It seems that this is indeed the case, Master." Dong Jianxin nodded. Chu Li furrowed his brows. Master is about to ascend to the heavens. How will he have the time to teach disciples? Dong Jianxin shook his head, revealing a helpless look. Chu Li glanced at Pang Shiji and smiled. "I have a suggestion." "Speak," Dong Jianxin urged. Chu Li smiled and said, "Why don't Brother Pang become your disciple, senior brother, and be groomed as the next hill master? But if that's the case, Brother Pang might feel wronged. After all, he'll be 1 generation younger than us." This, Dong Jianxin hesitated. Pang Shiji's expression changed slightly. That was a splendid idea. Becoming the Hill Master of Goddess Attraction Mountain was indeed very tempting. The Hill Master of Goddess Attraction Mountain was the best in the world. Who in a martial arts world did not want to be the best in the world. Forget it. I'm afraid of misleading him. How about this? Let Brother Pang become your disciple, junior brother. Dong Jianxin smiled and said, with your current status and reputation, Brother Pang will not feel wronged. He turned to look at Pang Shiji and smiled. Brother Pang, junior brother has never had a disciple. If you become his disciple, you'll be the first disciple. The future hill master of Goddess Attraction Mountain will undoubtedly be you. Pang Shiji was excited. Chu Li shook his head and said, Senior brother, it's not like you don't know how busy I am. How will I have the time to teach disciples? Don't think I don't know. What's the matter with Leader's son's disciple? Dong Jinshin scoffed and said, if you can help Leader's son train disciples, why can't you do it yourself? Why can't you think for Goddess Attraction Mountain? He knew what Master meant. The position of Goddess Attraction Mountain's Hill Master was reserved for him. His junior brother had already given up the position. With his junior brother as his backer, he was not so afraid of the position of Hill Master. However, he also knew that his intelligence was slightly better than the average person, but he was very mediocre in front of his junior brother. It would be difficult for the disciple he taught to surpass him. Therefore, he decided not to accept disciples and let his junior brother's disciple inherit the position of the next Hill Master. Before meeting Pang Shiji, he was wary of Pang Shiji, but after getting to know him for a period of time, he immediately changed his mind. This was a smart and simple young man, truly hard to come by. He was even better than himself. Chuli shook his head and laughed. I'm just building a foundation. How would I have the time to carry it around? Anyway, do you agree or not? Dong Jinshin scoffed and said, I think Brother Pang is very suitable to be your disciple. Pang Shiji knew that this was a rare opportunity. Once he became Chu Li's disciple, he would reach the sky in a single bound. His future was promising. He stood up and fist saluted, saying seriously, Greetings, Master. Chu Li waved his sleeve to stop him from kneeling. Junior brother, as a senior brother, are my words useless? Dong Jinshin scoffed. Chu Li sighed. Senior brother, you have to first report to Master and let him decide, right? I agree. Zhou Dunley slowly emerged from the void 10 meters in front of them. He stroked his beard and smiled. Chu Li, it's best that you accept Shiji as your disciple. It's settled then. Master, Chu Li hurriedly said. Zhou Dunley waved his hand and smiled. Don't make excuses anymore. Our Goddess Attraction Mountain should have a third generation of disciples. Let Shiji be your disciple. Since Master has ordered, I will obey. Chu Li helplessly nodded. Shiji greets Master. Pang Shiji knelt on the ground and solemnly kowtowed 9 times. Chu Li gently brushed him off and let him get up. He sighed. I'm still young and not at the age to accept disciples. However, since you are my disciple, you must know that I am very strict with my disciples. If you don't meet my requirements, the punishment will be heavy. As he spoke, his face was already tense and his expression was solemn. Yes, Master. Pang Shiji nodded solemnly. Chu Li solemnly said, if that's the case, then we are master and disciple. If you betray the sect in the future, don't blame me for being ruthless. I will destroy your soul and completely disappear from this world. Yes, Pang Shiji said in a low voice. Chu Li's expression relaxed, and he smiled. However, my disciple can't be too rigid. Use your brain for everything and think before you act. Otherwise, if you make a mistake, you will suffer. Yes, Pang Shiji hurriedly nodded. At this moment, he was already anxious and fearful. It was obvious that this disciple was not so easy to be. Dong Jinshin saw that Chu Li had finished lecturing his disciple. He closed fists, saluted, and laughed. Junior brother, congratulations. Chu Li smiled. It's the tiring task that senior brother has given me. Usually, I still need senior brother to supervise me. Of course. Dong Jinshin smiled. Chapter 1813. Zhou Dunley knew Chu Li's intentions. He wanted to bind Pang Shiji in the name of master and disciple to prevent future chaos. Moreover, after becoming master and disciple, he could better influence and change Pang Shiji's mind to prevent them from becoming enemies. Zhou Dunley was deeply gratified. He had always been worried that after Chu Li's martial arts had become so tyrannical that no one in the world could rival him, he would become arrogant and act recklessly. Arrogance and willfulness would lead to death. No matter how strong his martial arts were, this was the iron law. He was worried that Chu Li would kill Pang Shiji because he was a hidden danger to avoid future troubles. He did not expect Chu Li to not kill him, and instead take him as a disciple with the intention of saving him. This would eliminate future troubles. This was truly rare. Chu Li asked, "Master, have you met Senior Pang?" "Yes, he's been received to Goddess Attraction Mountain in the Outland." Zhou dumbly nodded and smiled. Everything went smoothly without any setbacks. "I'm truly thankful." Chu Li smiled. "This is also Senior Pang's good fortune. Shiji, you can cultivate in peace from now on. I will not ignore your grandfather." "Of course." Zhou dumbly nodded. "His cultivation level is not stable now, so he can't come back. In a month or two, I will bring him back to see Shiji. In the future, when Shiji's cultivation level is high enough, he can also go to the Outland to see Brother Pang." "Thank you, Honorable Master." Pang Shiji gave a fist salute and nodded excitedly. He did not hate Goddess Attraction Mountain. Before he came to Immortal Attraction Mountain, Pang Hui had sought out Pang Shiji and told him his thoughts. He explained everything clearly. If he could destroy Immortal Attraction Mountain, he would commit suicide. If he couldn't, he would commit suicide. Therefore, regardless of whether Goddess Attraction Mountain lived or died, he would die so that Pang Shiji could not take revenge. He brought this upon himself and could not blame Goddess Attraction Mountain. Later, Dong Jinshin came to Great One Palace to pick him up and told her what happened. Pang Shiji understood. Although he was sad, Pang Shiji did not hate Goddess Attraction Mountain. It was already very kind of them to come and take him to Goddess Attraction Mountain. He only felt gratitude. He was not that indiscriminate. At this moment, he was only grateful to his grandfather. Perhaps his grandfather had already calculated this step and used his death to knock open the doors of Immortal Attraction Mountain, allowing him to become a disciple of Immortal Attraction Mountain and have the opportunity to enter the heavenly deity realm. His grandfather's kindness was truly as deep as the ocean. He would never be able to repay it. Chu Li asked, "Master, how's the Grandmaster?" "The battle is over. I'm currently recovering." Zhou dumbly shook his head and sighed. "The next battle will be even more tragic." "When will it be?" Chu Li asked. "In a year or two." Zhou dumbly frowned. "This period of time will not be peaceful. Especially this side of the world will be even more lively. You also have to be careful. It is very likely that there will be higher level Heaven Man and Azura descending. You are now the common enemy of Heaven Man and Azura." Chu Li smiled and nodded. After Zhou Dunley and Dong Jinshin left, Chu Li brought Pang Shiji to Xiao Qi's courtyard. Xiao Qi and the other two girls were playing chess. Xiao Qi and Lu Yurong were fighting. Xiao Shi was helping them, shaking her head and sighing from time to time. Even the two of them together were not Lu Yurong's match. In terms of the depth of calculation, Lu Yurong was blessed by nature. Few could compare. When they heard footsteps, the three girls turned their heads and smiled, like three beautiful flowers blooming, dazzling Pang Shiji. Their beauty was too dazzling. It made people feel ashamed of their inferiority, not daring to approach them. "I thought you didn't want to come back," Xiao Shi said. "Is the floating mountain that interesting?" "There are many good things." Chu Li smiled and nodded. Then, he introduced Pang Shiji. "Chu Li, you actually accepted a disciple? How old is he?" Xiao Shi was dressed in a snow-white robe. She pursed her lips and smiled faintly, then looked at Pang Shiji up and down. She shook her head and said, "He has a good appearance. I don't know how many women will be harmed. Don't learn from your master." Chu Li coughed softly. "Second lady?" Xiao Shi rolled her eyes at him and said, "Did I say something wrong? It's better to save me some face." Chu Li smiled. Xiao Shi scoffed, but did not reprimand him. She continued to look at Pang Shiji. Xiao Qi smiled faintly. "He can cultivate the Tai Ching sex heart technique." Lu Yurong smiled flirtatiously. "He can also learn from the elusive Nine Heavens fairy sect." "Lu Yurong, What are you doing? Since when does the elusive Nine Heavens Fairy sect have a man's heart technique? Co sure said impatiently. Lu Yurong smiled. The elusive Nine Heavens Fairy sect really does have a man's heart technique. Chu Li waved his hand. Let me think. He had a wide range of knowledge. If he specialized in any one of them, he could become a top-notch master, but which heart technique to teach Pang Shiji was a problem. The Heavenly Demon Scripture, Life and Death Scripture, Omniscient Mirror, and Supreme Diamond Supreme Scripture could not be taught. The ones that could be taught were Mother Okana's Immobility Scripture, Great Light Scripture, Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture, Cloud Slashing Power, Ageless Longevity Technique, Nature Restoration Manifestation, Dragon Taming Technique, Tiger Taming Technique, Black Tortoise Power, and Vermilion Bird Power. There were many inheritances among these divine skills, such as Mahavir Immobility Scripture, which is an inheritance from the Titanium Temple, Great Light Scripture from the Holy Church of Light, and Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture. Especially the Nature Restoration Manifestation, he was a disciple of Amethyst Mountain. Lu Yurong said, he was originally a disciple of the Great One Palace. It's not like you don't understand the Great One Palace's martial arts. Co sure asked, do you? Lu Yurong shook her head. The Great One Palace is very mysterious. Very few people know about it. Most of the formations in the world could be broken, but that did not include the Great One Palace's formations because they started with formations, and their formation-breaking talismans were famous all over the world. If their formations could be broken by others, it would be a joke. The Great One Palace rarely interacted with the outside world, so not many people knew about their actual situation. Chu Li looked Pang Shiji up and down, then smiled. There's no hurry. I'll visit the Great One Palace when I have time and learn more about it before I teach him martial arts. For now, let's teach him swordsmanship. I have some experience in swordsmanship. Pang Shiji was overjoyed. Chu Li's swordsmanship was the most famous. He had killed Asuras and Celestials with his sword, and even killed Celestial from the Fu dynasty during the Battle of Goddess Attraction Mountain. If he could learn this swordsmanship, it would be easy for him to dominate the world. Chu Li was quite satisfied with Pang Shiji's temperament, and in addition to his aptitude, he agreed to take him as his disciple. He could see through Pang Shiji's inner and outer appearance, and could clearly see the flow of his heart technique, but it was not enough. If he wanted to nurture Pang Shiji carefully, he would have to plan carefully and let Xiao Qi, Xiao Shi, and Lu Yurong come up with ideas. One person's wisdom was not enough. Chu Li shook his head. Don't be too happy just yet. You can't learn the Regal Heaven Sword now. Learning it now will only harm you. Learn the basics first. The path of swordsmanship is about comprehension. Let's see how your comprehension is. Lu Yurong pursed her lips and smiled. You look like a smart person. Xiao Shi scoffed. Some people are smart on the outside, while others are smart on the inside. You still have to try, or else let me teach you on your behalf. You're not around all day. How will you have time to teach your disciple? Very well. Chu Li smiled, but you can't teach the Regal Sword Scripture, madam. Chapter 1814. Pang Shiji was excited for the entire day. It was a rare opportunity for him to become a disciple of Goddess Attraction Mountain. More importantly, he was able to become a disciple of the world's #1 master, Chu Li. It was truly a blessing. He did not sleep well at night. The next day, he woke up early and went to Xiao Qi's courtyard to greet her. Xiao Qi was dressed in a snow-white robe. She stood quietly in the middle of the courtyard with her eyes slightly closed. She looked like a jade statue. The air was fresh and pleasant. A faint fragrance wafted in the courtyard. It was from Xiao Qi's body. At her cultivation level, her body was pure and clean. She was fresh and natural, emitting an invisible fragrance. When he saw Xiao Qi, he could not help but feel ashamed and could not look at her directly. He felt that she was radiating brilliance. She was so beautiful that he could not have any thoughts of desecrating her. He even felt that his master was not worthy of her. He dared not disturb Xiao Qi, so he stood still and breathed very softly. After a while, Xiao Qi slowly opened her eyes and glanced at him. Pang Shiji felt like he was struck by lightning. His body trembled as if it did not belong to him. He could not help but be shocked. He did not expect Xiao Qi's cultivation level to be so high. She could make him lose his ability to fight with just a glance. Shurji, what martial arts do you want to cultivate in Great One Palace? Xiao Qi asked. Sword technique, palm technique, or fist technique? Palm technique, Pang Shurji answered honestly. Xiao Qi nodded. Palm technique. Your master has a cloud-slashing divine palm, or heavenly king palm. They're antique studies among antique studies. If you want to cultivate palm technique, you can cultivate those too. Pang Shurji said, Master's wife, I still want to learn sword technique. Sword technique is good too. Sword technique has no end. You'll have to start from the beginning. I'll teach you the 3 forms of godly sword first. Your master obtained it through a fortuitous encounter. It's powerful. Thank you, master's wife. Pang Shurji gave a fist salute. Xiao Qi said, this sword technique looks simple, but you need to have enough comprehension to cultivate it. Try to practice it first. She waved her hand. Suru, who had been hiding in the dark, fluttered over and handed over a long sword. Xiao Qi first performed the 3 forms of godly sword, then carefully practiced the first form. Pang Shurji had no way of grasping the key to this sword. Xiao Qi secretly shook her head, thinking that Chu Li had misjudged him. This Pang Shurji was tall, handsome, and had a good appearance. Moreover, he looked smart, but his comprehension was not extraordinary. Compared to Chu Li, the difference was like heaven and earth. In fact, he was almost the same as Dong Jianxin. To ordinary people, this was already an extremely high level of comprehension, but it was not considered a genius. It could only be considered a genius. If they were properly nurtured, they could also become a top-notch master, or even become an enlightened master. However, it was not very possible for them to achieve what Chu Li had achieved. She could not help but feel that it was a pity. Pang Shurji might just embarrass Chu Li in the future. However, she didn't show these thoughts on her face. She remained indifferent. Even though her expression was cold, she was extremely patient. She meticulously guided him and didn't lose her temper. At first, Pang Shurji thought that his comprehension and aptitude were outstanding, and he was afraid that he would not lose to his master Chu Li. It was just that he did not have the same fortuitous encounters and opportunities as his master, so he did not reach the top. If he had the same opportunities as his master Chu Li, his achievements would not be inferior to his. Now that he had learned the 3 forms of godly sword, he realized that his comprehension was far from what he had imagined. He felt that he was very stupid. Although Master's wife explained over and over again carefully and patiently without any impatience, he felt extremely ashamed. Shurji, get rid of distracting thoughts. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. It's okay to learn slowly. As long as you learn and practice, your power won't be weaker than others, Xiao Qi said calmly. You might even surpass your master. Yes, master's wife. Pang Shurji's spirit was lifted, and he quickly nodded. He must surpass his master. Chu Li appeared outside the reincarnation temple. He looked at the reincarnation temple that was hidden by the lush forest and shook his head. After he killed Luan Ming and monk Huanhua, the reincarnation temple would probably decline. The enlightened masters of the Qiu dynasty would not appear in the reincarnation temple and would be sent elsewhere. This meant that the reincarnation temple would waste hundreds of years, and they might not be able to make a comeback. However, he did not come today to check on the reincarnation temple's current situation. He came for the rotary pagoda. He obtained the inheritance of the sun and moon wheels from the treasure and the complete earth matrix and reincarnation scripture. At the same time, he also found out about the rotary pagoda's magical effects, so he was ready to enter the rotary pagoda. In a flash, he passed through the reincarnation temple's golden light shield and entered the rotary pagoda. Bang! Suddenly, there was a muffled sound. The rotary pagoda suddenly let out a muffled sound as if a door had been closed. He could not help but be stunned. He used the omniscient mirror to observe the entire rotary pagoda in his mind and found 12 red-robed monks chanting the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture. These 12 red-robed monks sat cross-legged on the top floor with the sun and moon wheels in the center. When Chuli used his observation, the 12 monks immediately began to move. They placed their palms on the sun and moon wheels, and 24 palms on the sun and moon wheels respectively. The sun and moon wheels began to shine so brightly that one could not look at them directly. Suddenly, the entire reincarnation temple began to shake. Then, it formed a huge force that rushed toward Chuli. Chuli's hair stood on end as he sensed danger. He had experienced the rotary pagoda's power before. At this moment, the 12 red-robed monks were activating an even stronger force that gave him a sense of danger. He wanted to escape the rotary pagoda in the next moment, but unfortunately, the space was fixed and he could not escape. Therefore, his body flashed, and he kept moving horizontally, chasing after the invisible force. The invisible force was as fast as lightning. He could only dodge it by activating it with all his might. However, the force was getting faster and faster. Gradually, he felt powerless and could not dodge it in time. Bang! He used the supreme, indestructible body of Vajra to block the attack. Then, he crashed into the wall of the rotary pagoda like a rock. He felt that the force was so huge that it was like a huge wave pressing down on him. He could not resist it and could only dodge it. His body was unusually tough, so he would not be hurt even if he crashed into a stone wall. However, this wall was made of copper. When he crashed into it, he felt his internal organs churning. Fortunately, the supreme, indestructible body of Vajra was strong and protected him from being injured. He flipped over and moved a foot horizontally to avoid the attack of another force. Bang! A shallow mark appeared on the wall. It was as if a long knife had slashed through it, and it was unusually sharp. Chuli used his hands to support himself against the wall and kept moving horizontally. With the combination of the force in his hands and feet, he was extremely fast and avoided every attack of the force by a hair's breadth. However, the force seemed to be endless, and it was getting faster. Bang! Chuli was hit again, and his body crashed into the copper wall. His internal organs churned, and he was almost injured. He quickly used his hands to dodge the next attack. While he was dodging, he thought that it was not a good idea to keep dodging. This force was like a burning flame that was burning more and more intensely. If he did not stop it before it reached its peak, it would be difficult to block this attack. His intuition told him that this was the source of the danger. His current force was not scary, but if it continued to grow stronger, it would eventually become a fatal threat. His thoughts turned quickly, and he suddenly shouted. At the same time, he shot out 3 god-punishing thunder swords. Bang! Through the observation of the omniscient mirror, he saw that his force was repelled before it hit the 12 red-robed monks. Their bodies were surrounded by an invisible force that blocked the 3 god-punishing thunder swords. Chapter 1815. Chuli's shout contained the musical assassination technique, using force to subdue the enemy, but to no avail. The 12 red-robed monks' life shields were pure and strong. The only way for him to escape was to use the sky-killing sword. He did not want to use the sky-killing sword too much. He would not use his lifespan if he could. Unfortunately, the situation was dire. If he did not use the sky-killing sword now, his life would be in danger. At this point, he no longer hesitated. He held the sky-killing sword and slowly pulled it out of its scabbard. The sky-killing sword stabbed at a spot in the void. Bang! There was a loud noise. The rotary pagoda shook. The sun and moon wheels around the 12 red-robed monks dimmed, as if they were suppressed. Chuli then thrust his sword into the void again. Bang! There was another loud noise. The rotary pagoda shook again, as if it was trembling. The sun and moon wheels flickered, as if they were going to be extinguished at any time. The 12 red-robed monks closed their eyes and did not move. The veins on their palms that were pressing on the sun and moon wheels were bulging. Their red robes fluttered as if the sun and moon wheels were about to break free from their palms. Chuli scoffed softly and thrust his sword again. Bang! The 12 red-robed monks immediately leaned back. The sun and moon wheels suddenly shone and shook off their palms. Chuli appeared behind them the next moment and waved his hand. The sun and moon wheels slowly floated and flew toward his hands. Namo Amitabha, a Buddhist chant resounded in his ears. A middle-aged monk stepped out of the void and retrieved the sun chakras and moon chakras into his hands. He put them into his wide red sleeves and pressed his palms together. Chu Li's expression was solemn. Celestials, the reincarnation temple is really generous. Celestials are descending one after another. As far as he knew, there was a certain price to pay for a celestial to descend. Sects like the four major sects would only have one or two celestials descend. It was rare to have four celestials descend like the longevity sect. For a sect to send down a deva was a price that could be borne. For two deva, the price was enormous, and for three, it was unimaginable. For four, it was even more difficult to bear. For every additional deva, the price would be dozens of times higher, not just a few times higher. The middle-aged monk's appearance was mediocre and indescribable. He was tall and burly, with eyebrows like reclining silkworms, a protruding nose, and a square mouth. The corners of his eyes drooped, giving off an indescribable feeling of sadness, as if there was nothing happy about him. Namo Amitabha. The middle-aged monk put his palms together and sighed. Amdilian. Greetings, almsgiver Chu. Chu Li said, Monk Earth Lotus has quite a high seniority. As far as he knew, the reincarnation temple did not have a Dharma name of Earth within 5 generations. It was obvious that the reincarnation temple had stayed in the outland for a long time. Judging from his unfathomable cultivation, he was indeed a powerful figure. He secretly compared Song Sizu to this Earth Lotus and found that it was difficult to tell who was superior. Both of them made him feel fearful. Seniority and so on are just the views of the mortal world. All living beings in the Buddha realm are equal. Monk Earth Lotus said slowly, Almsgiver Chu, you've repeatedly made things difficult for my temple. Do you have any unresolved grievances? Chu Li asked, Are Luan Ming and Monk Xuan Hua doing well in the outland? Everything is fine. Monk Earth Lotus said, Their cultivation has been perfected and they did not sink into depravity in the outland. Continuing their cultivation is far better than staying in this whirling world. We have to thank you for freeing them, Almsgiver Chu. Chu Li saw that Monk Earth Lotus was not angered by him and was still as calm as before. He secretly put up his guard and smiled. That's good. It seems that the reincarnation temple still has an enlightened master. It's all thanks to you, Monk Earth Lotus, right? As a disciple of the reincarnation temple, this is what I should do. Monk Earth Lotus nodded slowly. I came here on my own accord to descend to this realm for 2 matters. One is for our temple to inherit the enlightened master's position and not let it fall into the hands of others. Now that this is done, the other matter is about to be completed. The other matter is to kill me, right? Chu Li smiled. Monk Earth Lotus smiled. Almsgiver Chu's comprehension is indeed amazing. You're able to understand with just a hint. You're a Buddhist. Chu Li smiled. Monk, you talk too much. If you want to kill me, just do it. Please. He pressed his hand on the sky, regaining sword, and was on high alert. He was wary of Monk Earth Lotus's trump card. Monk Earth Lotus bowed with pressed palms and sighed. I never thought that Almsgiver Chu would possess our temple's Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture. Chu Li said, I cultivated it by chance. Unfortunately, with the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture, I can't become a family with the reincarnation temple. Instead, I become an enemy. If Almsgiver Chu obtained it by chance, then you're indeed fated with the reincarnation temple. Monk Earth Lotus said gently, Buddha will help those who are fated. If that's the case, why don't Almsgiver Chu enter the reincarnation temple to cultivate the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture? Compared to your sect's dragon taming technique, the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture is far more mysterious. The dragon taming technique reaches its end at the enlightened master level, but my Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture is just the beginning at the enlightened master level. Reversing yin and yang, transcending life and death, is the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture. Chuli laughed. You want to help me? That's right. Monk Earth Lotus said, repent and become a Buddha. Almsgiver Chu is fated with the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture, as well as the Reincarnation Temple. It might be a good thing to turn hostility into friendship. Thank you for your kind offer. Chuli shook his head. Forget it. Monk Earth Lotus said, the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture can reverse yin and yang. I'm sure Almsgiver Chu has already comprehended it at your level. As for transcending life and death, I'm afraid Almsgiver Chu doesn't believe in it, right? Chuli said, life and death are the most important things. How can you truly transcend it? You're just deceiving yourself. The deeper his understanding of Buddhism, the more he felt that it was difficult to transcend life and death. The life and death scripture was the one that truly transcended life and death. After experiencing life and death several times, life and death were like sleeping and waking. Waking up was life, and dying was like sleeping. Monk Earth Lotus said, that's because Almsgiver Chu's cultivation is insufficient. Why was the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture created? It's to transcend life and death, a true liberation. Chuli smiled. Monk, why do we have to discuss Scripture? It's better to fight. If I can help you, Almsgiver Chu, it's better than killing you. It's a great merit. Monk Earth Lotus smiled. Almsgiver Chu, do you want to know the secrets of the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture? Chuli said, of course. I can explain it to you in detail. Monk Earth Lotus smiled. Almsgiver Chu, feel free to ask me anything you don't understand. I'll tell you everything I know. Chuli laughed. Are you really going to help me with the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture? Yes. Monk Earth Lotus nodded slowly. I'll definitely help you. Almsgiver Chu sighed. Chuli sighed. A monk's plan won't work. If he could help him enter the Reincarnation Temple, it would be a great honor for the temple. Countless heroes in the world would be curious and want to see the secrets of the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture. The reputation of the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture would reach its peak and surpass Goddess Attraction Mountain. Moreover, with his protection, no one would be able to break into the Reincarnation Temple. It was equivalent to recruiting a guardian Vajra for the Reincarnation Temple. Monk Earth Lotus smiled. I'll give it a try. Almsgiver Chu, feel free to ask. Chuli sighed. If that's the case, I'll give it a try. He had obtained the complete inheritance of the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture, but the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture was too profound. Even with the inheritance, he could not fully understand it. Even with the omniscient mirror and the heavenly star insight skill, he could not fully understand the secrets of the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture. Chapter 1816. What is Yin and Yang? Chuli immediately asked. The Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture talks about Yin and Yang everywhere, but what is Yin and Yang? Heaven and earth are divided into Yin and Yang, one illusory and one real. Monk Earth Lotus smiled. The Yin and Yang of the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture is nothing more than these 2 points. Turning Yin into Yang is to meet the real with the false, and turn the false into the real. Chuli shook his head. This is too shallow. Life and death are also Yin and Yang. What is life and death? Reality is life. Emptiness is death, Monk Earth Lotus said. Chuli still shook his head and said, there is a mystery between life and death. Life is movement and death is stillness. So Yin and Yang are also movement and stillness. Yin and Yang are false and real. Movement and stillness, rise and fall, advance and retreat, up and down. Monk Earth Lotus said, the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture talks about life and death. Life and death are the 2 words that describe it. Everything else is minor. Chuli did not just ask for advice, he also debated with him. The 12 red-robed monks sat at the side and listened quietly. They tried their best to keep up with their conversation, but the 2 of them spoke faster and faster. Their thoughts were moving like lightning, and they couldn't keep up. They could only try their best to remember what they were saying and analyze it in detail when they returned. Chuli was secretly amazed by the depth of Monk Earth Lotus's dermic base, which changed his impression of the Reincarnation Temple. It seemed that the Reincarnation Temple did not only cultivate martial arts, but also the dermic base like the Tempest Temple. Earth Lotus Monk's expression was calm, but deep down, he was amazed by Chu Li's deep understanding of Buddhism. He was indeed a natural-born disciple of Buddhism. If it could really convert him into the Reincarnation Temple, it would be a great merit. Ever since he stepped into the mortal world, he had been thinking about the path to the Reincarnation Temple. Chu Li's power was already established, and his position as the world's #1 master was stable. Even if the Celestials and Asuras were to interfere, it would be difficult for them to shake his position as the #1 master in the mortal world. Initially, he did not have much conflict of interest with the Reincarnation Temple. However, due to the repeated attacks, he could no longer hold back and decided to kill them. Now, the Reincarnation Temple no longer had any conflict of interest with Chu Li. In the end, he decided to let go of his personal grudges and stop being entangled with Chu Li. If the Reincarnation Temple wanted to continue existing, it needed to compromise and mend its relationship with Chu Li. This conversion was the beginning of their relationship. 2 hours later, the two of them stopped talking and closed their eyes. Chu Li had gained a lot from this. He felt that all his questions had been answered, and the fog that was shrouding the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture had been removed, revealing its true face. The Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture circulated in his heart, and everything in the world turned into yin and yang. His understanding of the Dharma was profound, and coupled with his comprehension of the life and death Scripture, it was even easier for him to comprehend the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture. This debate with the Earth Lotus caused his comprehension of the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture to suddenly deepen by a large margin, as if he had come into contact with the true essence of the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture. He could vaguely feel that the magical effect of the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture was to reverse life and death. It was said to have been created by Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva made a great vow that he would not become a Buddha until hell was empty. He wanted hell to be empty, so he created the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture to save the people in hell. As long as he cultivated the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture, he would be able to reverse life and death and return to the human world from hell. Although he did not know whether it was true or not, the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture did have a miraculous effect of reversing life and death. If he did not comprehend the life and death Scripture, he might still have doubts about reversing life and death, thinking that there was no such mystical technique in the world and that it was only a legend. After comprehending the life and death Scripture, he had reversed life and death several times, so he firmly believed in it. Faith was the foundation of everything, especially the Dharma. Faith led to spirituality. Buddhist martial arts relied on the Dharma, so it required faith as well. Only faith could lead to progress and success. The Earth Lotus monk closed his eyes and meditated, feeling that he had gained a lot. The 12 red-robed monks were also quiet and did not move. In their minds, they recalled what the Earth Lotus monk had said over and over again, and each time, they were enlightened. After a while, Chu Li opened his eyes. "Thank you, great master." The Earth Lotus monk pressed his palms together. "Thank you, almsgiver Chu." Chu Li said, "Great master, I want to go into isolated cultivation in the Wheel Pagoda to comprehend the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture." "Very well, of course." The Earth Lotus monk smiled. Chu Li shook his head. "Great master, please don't misunderstand. I'm not being converted. I just have a deep understanding of the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture, and the Wheel Pagoda is the best place to comprehend it." "I understand." The Earth Lotus monk's smile did not diminish. Chu Li did not explain further. He turned around and went downstairs. He sat in the middle of the first floor and closed his eyes. "Honorable Master," a middle-aged, red-robed monk pressed his palms together. "Isn't it a little inappropriate to let almsgiver Chu stay in the Wheel Pagoda?" "It's fine." The Earth Lotus monk said, "If almsgiver Chu can comprehend the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture, it'll be a blessing for the Wheel Temple. You've had a great opportunity, so take care and cultivate in isolation." Yes. The middle-aged, red-robed monk pressed his palms together solemnly. The remaining 11 red-robed monks did not say anything else. They closed their eyes and continued to comprehend. The Earth Lotus monk glanced downstairs as if he could see Chu Li. He smiled and was delighted. No matter what, he had erased Chu Li's hostility toward the Wheel Temple. As for the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture, it was for the fated to obtain. Since Chu Li was fated with the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture, if he could comprehend it, he could become a good knowledge of the Wheel Temple. The Wheel Temple would benefit from him. Chu Li sat cross-legged in the middle of the first floor and sighed. Although he could not see through the Earth Lotus monk's thoughts, he vaguely understood that after his current position was stabilized, the attitude of others had begun to change. For example, the Wheel Temple had always wanted to kill him. Now that they felt that his position as the #1 master in the mortal world was stable, they felt that they had no confidence in killing him. Hence, they accepted him and were no longer hostile. He quickly put aside these distracting thoughts and focused on the Wheel Pagoda. He sat cross-legged on the ground and blended with the Wheel Pagoda as if he had become one with it. He carefully felt every brick and tile of the Wheel Pagoda, its structure and shape, and every detail. He wanted to become one with it. He first used the omniscient mirror to observe. Then his mind began to envelop the entire pagoda and slowly assimilate it. Thanks to his powerful soul, his mind slowly immersed into the pagoda and felt its unique aura. A sense of danger and fatality surfaced in his heart. He hesitated for a moment before continuing to immerse his mind into the pagoda. As time passed, his sense of danger became clearer. This Wheel Pagoda was like a deadly beast that wanted to devour him. It was only watching him coldly from the side. Its mouth was already wide open, ready to swallow him at any time. After Chu Li's mind moved, he hesitated for a moment. He believed in his intuition that this pagoda was definitely a fatal danger. If he was not careful, he would vanish into thin air. Not only would his body be destroyed, but his soul would also be completely destroyed. However, he was unwilling to give up just like that. This was because this pagoda contained the essence of cultivating the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture. If he succeeded, he would be able to cultivate the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture completely and truly master the power to reverse life and death. Not only his own life and death, but the life and death of others as well. How could he be willing to give up just like that? After thinking for a moment, he decided to continue immersing his mind into the pagoda. He wanted to become one with the pagoda. Roar! A loud roar rang in his ears. A monster appeared out of thin air in front of him. It looked like a spirit tiger, a spirit lion, a vermilion bird, and a Kirin. He had never seen such a strange appearance before. Its bloody mouth was as big as a mountain, and it came down on him. Chapter 1817. Just as Mahaviro Kanabuddha was about to open his eyes, Ksitigarbha and Chakravarti Buddha suddenly opened his eyes and formed a seal with his hands. The sun wheels and moon wheels on his shoulders suddenly shone and merged in the void of his mind. Then they shot out and landed in between Chu Li's eyebrows. A ray of light shone between his eyebrows, and Chu Li's spirit was lifted. Then he returned to normal. The monster in front of him had disappeared, leaving only a clear mind. His merging with the Chakravarti pagoda sped up. Chu Li's attention quickly fell on Ksitigarbha and Chakravarti Buddha. He rarely used the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture, so he did not pay much attention to Ksitigarbha and Chakravarti Buddha. He only allowed it to stay in his mind. Sometimes, he chanted sutras with other Buddhas to help his soul energy. He did not pay much attention to it. Now that he looked closely, he realized that a pair of sun wheels and moon wheels had unknowingly appeared on Ksitigarbha and Chakravarti Buddha's shoulders. The sun was on the left shoulder, and the moon was on the right shoulder. They were like armor lying flat on his shoulders and merged together. Since the sun wheels and moon wheels were very small, only the size of a thumb, they were easily overlooked. That was why he did not notice them earlier. This time, when the sun wheels and moon wheels suddenly shone, he finally noticed their existence. He suddenly realized that this pair of sun wheels and moon wheels might be the sun wheels and moon wheels that he came across in the Longevity Church's secret treasure. He obtained the complete inheritance of the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture from that pair of sun wheels and moon wheels, and also the mystery of the Chakravarti Pagoda. He did not expect to obtain the essence of the sun wheels and moon wheels. The sun wheels and moon wheels in the void of his mind were not real. They must have been formed by the light that the sun wheels and moon wheels shot into his mind. They were the essence of the sun wheels and moon wheels. Now, the sun wheels and moon wheels in the secret treasure had probably lost their souls and only had their forms. After the sun wheels and moon wheels destroyed the monster, everything went smoothly. Soon, his mind was immersed in the Chakravarti Pagoda and became one with the Chakravarti Pagoda. He could feel every tile and brick of the pagoda and even the weeds in the cracks. The entire Chakravarti Pagoda appeared in his mind and was projected in the omniscient mirror. It was as if a real Chakravarti Pagoda had appeared in the void of his mind. The situation inside the pagoda was exactly the same as the real Chakravarti Pagoda. This was only the first step. The second step was the key. He needed to change his body and transform it into a revolving wheel pagoda. The tip of the pagoda was the Nirvana wheel. Then the glabella wheel, throat wheel, heart wheel, umbilical wheel, and seabed wheel formed a layer each, forming a 6-layered pagoda, becoming a wheel pagoda. After forming this pagoda in his body, he could then throw the chakra pagoda into it. As long as he formed the same pagoda, the pagoda would naturally circulate and form the chakra pagoda in his body. Complementing the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture, he could achieve the effect of reversing life and death. This required sufficient time to condense bit by bit and then dissipate. The slightest mistake would cause it to collapse and cause a backlash to the mind and body. It required a period of time to recover and condense again. Therefore, it all depended on the accumulation of time bit by bit. There was no shortcut. It was a slow, meticulous, and painstaking effort. Even though his soul was far stronger than ordinary people, there was no shortcut. If it wasn't for his powerful soul, he wouldn't have been able to complete the first step. His mind was immersed in the pagoda. Without a tyrannical spirit, without the complete inheritance, without the help of the sun and moon wheels, he would undoubtedly die. It was like a natural moat. Time passed slowly, and he didn't know how much time had passed in silence. 10 days later, he didn't even manage to condense one floor of the pagoda. The chakra pagoda rumbled, and a middle-aged monk in red stepped into it. He was short and burly, had a big round head, a fat nose, and a round face. He looked rather comical. He wore a red robe, but it didn't seem to fit him at all. It seemed like it shouldn't be his robe. After he stepped into the chakra pagoda, he took another step to Earth Lotus's side and bowed with pressed palms. Grand, honorable master, I heard that Chu Li is here. Jining, what do you want? Earth Lotus monk slowly opened his eyes. The other 12 red-robed monks opened their eyes and quietly looked at this comical fat man. They didn't look down on him because of his appearance. Instead, they looked solemn and even respectful. I heard that Chu Li is the world's #1 master. I wanted to learn a thing or two from him, Jining said with pressed palms. He stuttered as if he was too scared to speak, but he was actually stuttering. You want to take revenge, right? Earth Lotus monk asked. Not really. Jining shook his big round head. Master. Before he left, he told me not to take revenge on Chu Li. Earth Lotus monk nodded slowly. Luan Ming is quite wise. Grand, honorable master, don't worry. I won't take revenge. I just want to see the world's #1 master and see how big the gap between us is, Jining said seriously. Earth Lotus Monk said, "Go then." "Thank you, honorable master." Jining looked happy. He bowed with pressed palms and took a step forward to Chu Li. Chu Li opened his eyes and looked at him. Jining bowed with pressed palms and said gently, "Namo Amitba, almsgiver Chu, I Jining greet you." He said this in one breath. It was obvious that he had practiced this for a long time. He didn't stutter at all. Chu Li didn't get up from the ground. He pointed in front of him. "Sit down and talk." "Jining, are you here to learn martial arts or to take revenge?" "Revenge." Jining bowed with pressed palms and said slowly, "My master was killed by almsgiver Chu. Of course, I have to take revenge. Please enlighten me, almsgiver Chu." Chu Li laughed. "Then why don't you have any murderous intent? You're hiding your murderous intent," Jining said. Chu Li felt that this monk was interesting. He was much more interesting than Zhuanming. He had such a good appearance and stuttered a little. Yet, he was able to obtain the enlightened master's inheritance. He must have something extraordinary about him. Although Jining didn't mind stuttering, he didn't want to show it in front of Chu Li. He practiced every sentence very well. Chu Li smiled. "Why haven't I seen you before? I'm familiar with the reincarnation temple. I've never seen you before. This poor monk has always been traveling. Monk Utmost Peace said solemnly. Chu Li said, "I see. I'm sure you're knowledgeable and wise." "I dare not," Jining said. Chu Li sighed. "I wonder what you think about the world now. The Celestials have descended and Asuras have followed. The world is going to be in chaos soon. Do you have a way to save all living beings?" "Namo Amitba." Jining was a little surprised. He didn't expect Chu Li to have a compassionate heart. It was really different from his image of a killing god. Chu Li said, "Are you going to give a sermon and teach the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture to all living beings?" "Namo Amitba." Jining shook his head. Chu Li sighed. "In my opinion, you should leave the temple and travel the world. You should help more people and alleviate some of their suffering." "I'm enlightened." Jining bowed with pressed palms. "But I'd like to learn martial arts from almsgiver Chu." A blue light flashed in Chu Li's eyes. He stabbed the god-killing thunder needle. A sun wheel flashed between Jining's brows. Ding! It sounded like an iron needle hitting a jade chime. Monk Jining put his palms together slowly and turned to leave. His round and plump body looked a little comical in the red monk's robe. But at this moment, he looked a little free and easy. As Chu Li watched him leave, he smiled and sat down again to condense the pagoda. Monk Jining took a step forward and stood in front of Monk Earth Lotus. He pressed his palms together and greeted, "Grandmaster, have you seen it?" Earth Lotus Monk opened his eyes and asked with a smile. Monk Jining bowed and said, "I've already exchanged blows with him. The difference between us is like clouds and mud. I'm truly ashamed. I'm prepared to leave the temple and travel the world." "Have you decided?" Earth Lotus said calmly. "Yes." Monk Jining said, "It's difficult to master the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture without experiencing the pain of all living beings. I'll be leaving the temple." He suddenly stopped stuttering, and his emotions were surging. He knew that there was a big gap between him and Chu Li, but he did not expect it to be this big. It was like an adult and a child. This made him want to work harder. If I don't go to hell, who will? If I don't experience all kinds of pain and suffering, how can I understand the thoughts of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva and understand the wonders of the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture? "Very well, go then," Earth Lotus said slowly. Monk Jining bowed deeply and then bowed to the 12 red-robed monks. "I'll leave the reincarnation temple to you masters, masters' uncles." The 12 red-robed monks put their palms together and returned the gesture. Monk Jining took a step forward and disappeared before everyone's eyes. Earth Lotus Monk smiled and slowly closed his eyes to continue comprehending the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture. Chu Li continued to condense the pagoda. The first layer was gradually formed, and it looked exactly the same as the reincarnation pagoda. 15 days had passed since the first layer was formed. Just as he was about to condense the second level, he suddenly sensed something. The omniscient mirror shone outside the reincarnation temple. It was a handsome young man in a yellow robe standing outside the temple with his hands behind his back. He looked very handsome. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. This was an enlightened master. Chen Changmao greets Master Jining, the young man in a yellow robe said loudly. His voice was calm, but it came slowly and suppressed the chanting in the reincarnation temple. It spread to every corner of the reincarnation temple and every monk's ears, including Chu Li's. Chu Li chuckled. It was indeed the power of an enlightened master to be able to penetrate the protection of the reincarnation pagoda. There were only a few enlightened masters in the world. His surname was Chun, so his identity was obvious. He must be Chun Jinji's son. Chu Li shook his head. He must have come to find monk Jining for no good reason. Chen Changmao greets Master Jining. Please come out and meet me, Chen Changmao said slowly. Namo Amitba. An old monk in a red robe slowly opened the temple door and walked down the stairs to Chen Changmao. He pressed his palms together and said, Unfortunately, Jining has just left the temple to travel the world. Almsgiver Chun, you're late. Master Jining has left the temple to travel? Chen Changmao was surprised. The old monk in a red robe had a face full of wrinkles. He pressed his palms together and said, Almsgiver Chun, please come in and have some tea. There's no need. Chen Changmao shook his head. Since Master Jining isn't here, I'll look for him. Please. The old monk pressed his palms together again. Chen Changmao suddenly looked up at the reincarnation pagoda and pointed at it. Who's in the pagoda? My honorable master and almsgiver Chu, the old monk replied. Chen Changmao was stunned. Chu Li? Yes, the old monk replied. Almsgiver Chu is comprehending martial arts in the pagoda. You? Chen Changmao looked at him in surprise. The old monk in a red robe said, Almsgiver Chu has turned hostility into friendship with our temple. Hee, what a trick. Chen Changmao suddenly shook his head and laughed. He looked at the old monk in a deep gaze. As expected of the reincarnation temple, the old monk in a red robe remained calm. Almsgiver Chu has the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture, which is closely related to our temple. I'm sure he'll be able to advance the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture to a deeper level after cultivating in the pagoda. All right, I'll take my leave then, Chen Changmao said. He could not be bothered to say anything else. He stepped into the void and disappeared. Although he was furious and full of murderous intent, he did not dare to meet Chu Li. Moreover, he knew that he had sensed something earlier because Chu Li had purposely released his aura so that he could sense it. Chu Li wanted him to take the initiative and take the opportunity to teach him a lesson. A wise man does not fight when the odds are against him. How could he go and die alone? The old monk in a red robe smiled. He pressed his palms together and turned to return to the temple. Chu Li sat in the pagoda and shook his head with a smile. His current situation was indeed different from before. The enlightened masters would flee upon hearing the news. His expression suddenly changed. Chapter 1819. The two middle-aged men's aura was monstrous. Behind them was a sea of blood and a mountain of corpses. It was earth-shattering. They had no intention of hiding their strength. They immediately released their aura and alerted the reincarnation temple. They were obviously prepared to massacre the temple. Based on their profound cultivation levels, they might be able to do so. Chu Li frowned. He was now at the reincarnation temple and had just turned the tables on the reincarnation temple. He was still comprehending and cultivating in the reincarnation pagoda and had received guidance from Earth Lotus Monk. He could not just stand by and watch, so he had to take action. The middle-aged man was an Azura of a very high level. He might have reached rank 2. He had to be careful. The two men sized up the reincarnation temple for a moment and struck out at the same time. Outsiders could not see anything, but Chu Li could see the two blood-red auras penetrating the wall of the reincarnation temple with the omniscient mirror. Bang! There was a loud sound, and the reincarnation temple seemed to tremble. A dark golden light rose outside the reincarnation temple and blocked the two red auras. The two middle-aged Asuras nodded, thinking that it was as they expected, so they continued to attack. Bang, 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 bang. The two men's palm energy seemed to be endless. The reincarnation temple kept shaking. The dark golden light blocked the dark red aura. The dark golden light became brighter and flickered nonstop. The two middle-aged Asura's palm energy was strange and profound. Each strike consumed a large amount of the dark golden light. Chuli could see the 12 red-robed monks sitting cross-legged around Earth Lotus Monk. They pressed their palms on the ground. There were palm prints on the ground. They placed their palms on these palm prints and channeled their inner energy to activate the temple's protective formation. The reincarnation pagoda was the pivot of the temple's protective formation. Through the omniscient mirror, Chuli felt that the 12 red-robed monks would not be able to hold on for long. They had used up most of their inner energy. Even if the 12 of them combined their strength and doubled their power, they were still a far cry from the two Asuras outside. Each of these two Asuras was on par with Earth Lotus Monk. Earth Lotus Monk could not handle them alone, not even with the help of the 12 red-robed monks. If he was not here today, it will be difficult for the reincarnation temple. Could this be fate? Earth Lotus Monk had planted good karma to produce such a good result. This made him feel an inexplicable respect for the karma of the world. Bam, 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 bam. The reincarnation temple was shaking incessantly. The 12 monks in red solemnly circulated their powers to resist. The monks in the reincarnation temple began to assemble quickly. They did not come out to fight. Instead, they hid in several secret passages and waited for orders to evacuate. The entire reincarnation temple quieted down. Everyone was preparing to leave. Earth Lotus slowly opened his eyes and took a step to the top of the reincarnation temple. Standing there, he pressed his palms together and bowed. Namo Amit Ba. The Buddhist chant was long and resounded between heaven and earth. The gazes of the two Asuras landed on monk Earth Lotus. Their gazes were like lightning, and 6 pairs of eyes clashed in the air. They stared at Earth Lotus Monk while waving their palms nonstop. 2 balls of dark golden splendor flickered and grew brighter and brighter wherever their palms struck. Chuli pondered for a moment and suddenly appeared on the top floor in a flash. He stretched out his palms. Suddenly, a vast amount of spiritual energy from the outland descended. A pair of sun wheels and moon wheels appeared above his head. The sun wheel on the left and the moon wheel on the right. The vast spiritual energy landed on the 2 wheels, and they began to spin. The sun wheels and moon wheels rotated in circles like fish swimming in water. They formed a circular area 20 feet above Chu Li's head. Black and white blended together and were indistinguishable. The spiritual energy that entered this area was quickly converted into spiritual energy from the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture. It split into 12 rays and landed on the 12 palm prints. The 12 monks in red were pushed back by an invisible force. They could not help but move out of the way. They stared at Chu Li with their mouths agape. They looked at the area formed by the sun wheels and moon wheels above his head. They looked at the 12 palm prints that were glowing with a dark golden light. Bam, 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 bam. The muffled sounds did not stop. The 2 Asuras sensed that something was amiss. Where their palm energy landed, the dark golden splendor dimmed again. It was like a lamp that was about to be extinguished. However, this dim, dark golden splendor contained a powerful feeling. Who's inside? One of the Asuras asked in a hoarse voice. Chu Li remained silent. He continued to channel spiritual energy from the outland into the sun wheels and moon wheels. Then, he turned it into the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture inner energy and channeled it into the pagoda to maintain the great formation that protected the temple. The 2 Asuras could not do anything to the pagoda no matter how hard they tried. The great formation that protected the temple was as firm as a rock. The 2 Asuras were instantly furious. They sensed that the reincarnation temple must have strong reinforcements. Otherwise, with their cultivation level, they would have broken through the Great Formation and entered the temple to kill and destroy the Reincarnation Temple. Earth Lotus Monk looked up at the sky. As a celestial being, he was most sensitive to the spiritual energy from the Outland. He could not help but feel speechless when he felt the spiritual energy that was as vast as the sea. He had already overestimated Chu Li, but he still underestimated him. Chu Li converted the spiritual energy from the Outland and gained a deeper understanding of the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture. His mind gradually focused on the pagoda inside his body. He had already built a layer. At this moment, a trace of the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture inner energy fell on this layer of the pagoda. The originally illusory pagoda suddenly became a little clearer. It actually absorbed the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture inner energy. As the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture inner energy was injected, it was as if there was soil casting the pagoda, turning it from illusory to real. However, this pagoda had extremely high requirements for the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture inner energy. It would only accept it if it was not pure, and the requirement was huge. The spiritual energy from the Outland was divided into 13 parts. One part fell on this pagoda, but it only made the pagoda a little clearer. According to his estimation, it would take a whole day of condensing and circulating spiritual energy to completely solidify this layer of the pagoda. His mind was focused on the pagoda, and he did not know how much time had passed. The two Asuras shrank their bodies and suddenly became thinner. They looked like skeletons, and the palm force that they struck out suddenly increased by several times. When each palm landed on the wall of the reincarnation temple, there would be two balls of dark golden splendor that would block them. The color of the dark golden splendor did not change. It was still dark, simple, and vigorous, and contained a sense of power. After 100 palm strikes, the two Asuras turned around and left. They had already activated their secret skills, but they still could not break the defense of the reincarnation temple. If they continued to fight, they would only humiliate themselves. It was better to retreat as soon as possible, lest they were trapped. When they disappeared, Earth Lotus Monk heaved a sigh of relief and stepped back into the pagoda. He saw Chu Li holding up the sky with both palms. Two balls of splendor were circulating in the void above his head. Torrential spiritual energy descended from the sky and landed on the two balls of splendor. Immediately, it turned into 13 streams of spiritual energy that were injected into the 12 palm prince and his own body. Chu Li seemed to be in a meditative state. No matter how much spiritual energy descended, he continued to activate the protective formation of the temple. Earth Lotus Monk shook his head and smiled. He did not expect Chu Li's Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture to reach such a level. It was even better than him. It was no wonder that he could become the world's #1 master at such a young age. His comprehension was indeed amazing. When the 12 red-robed monks saw him, they pressed their palms together and bowed. Earth Lotus Monk waved his hand, indicating that they should not disturb Chu Li. He did not expect that a wrong decision would turn hostility into friendship and actually save the reincarnation temple. If it were not for Chu Li, even if Jining was there, the two of them would not be able to deal with the two Asuras. The reincarnation temple would be in danger. Boom! The entire reincarnation temple suddenly shook violently. Chu Li suddenly woke up. Chapter 1820. Everyone was shocked and looked left and right. Earth Lotus Monk sensed that something was wrong with the wheel pagoda. He frowned and closed his eyes to sense it. He wanted to know where the commotion was coming from and why it was causing such a huge commotion. Was another strong enemy invading? After a while, he opened his eyes and looked puzzled as if he was thinking about something. There were no strong enemies outside the reincarnation temple. After the two Asuras left, they did not return. It seemed that they had scared off the other Asuras. The Asuras hiding in the dark also left with them and dared not come back. However, he noticed a strange phenomenon. The protective formation of the temple seemed to have become stronger than before, and its protective power had increased tremendously. It was obvious that Chu Li had channeled too much spiritual energy into the Chakram Pagoda, which caused the protective formation of the temple to change. Perhaps when the formation was first set up, it needed a huge amount of spiritual energy to replenish it. Unfortunately, the ancestors' skills were not enough and could not replenish it. The younger generations were getting worse and worse. It was difficult to replenish the consumption. This time, Chu Li had completely replenished the great formation that protected the temple. From now on, the reincarnation temple would be worry-free. Even if he was not around, there was no need to worry about the two tyrannical Asuras from before. They could not break the formation. As he thought about this, he turned and bowed to Chu Li. "Thank you, almsgiver Chu." Chu Li shook his head and smiled. "You're welcome, great master. I should be the one thanking you." He woke up after the wheel pagoda shook, because the wheel pagoda had injected spiritual energy into it. This spiritual energy entered the first layer of the pagoda that was solidifying. Although the original first layer of the pagoda was supplemented by a huge amount of inner energy from the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture, it gradually became clearer. However, there was a limit to how clear it could be. It could not be completely solidified in a short time. Even if it was extremely clear, it might not be real. After this spiritual energy entered, he suddenly felt different. It was as if he had a seed that could finally blossom and bear fruit. It was not born out of thin air and forcefully solidified into reality. He knew that this seed was the core of the pagoda. It was the most important step for him to solidify the pagoda. Without this seed, even if it was extremely solid, it would still be a fake pagoda and not the real Will Pagoda. Therefore, he thanked him sincerely and not out of courtesy. Monk Earth Lotus smiled. "If it weren't for almsgiver Chu, our reincarnation temple would have to move away for seclusion. Asura was powerful, but they acted in secret. Therefore, most people knew that the celestial beings had descended and caused chaos in the world, but they didn't know that Asura was also involved in it. They added fuel to the fire and took the opportunity to secretly destroy the Buddhist sects that were a threat to them." Chu Li nodded slowly and asked, "Do you have any countermeasures, Great Master? Even the Grand Masters can't deal with the Asura state. What else can I do?" Monk Earth Lotus shook his head and sighed. "One rises and one falls, the cycle of karma. This is the general trend, and a single person can't resist it." Chu Li asked, "Are we just going to let them commit murder?" At this time, protecting yourself is the best strategy. Monk Earth Lotus said, "Prosperity leads to decline. Asura will not be complacent for too long." Chu Li could not help but laugh. "You're lying to yourself, Great Master. The Asura realm has always been very powerful. Moreover, which realm has been conquered by the Asura realm? It has been like this for thousands of years, hasn't it?" Namo Amitabha Buddha. Monk Earth Lotus nodded slowly. There was no doubt about this. The Asura realm was too powerful and had always been prosperous. However, he firmly believed that the Asura realm would not always be like this, and the Grand Masters would definitely be able to reverse the situation. Chu Li looked at Monk Earth Lotus with a smile. Monk Earth Lotus sighed. Back then, the Founding Master had a prophecy that the Asura realm would be powerful, but in the end, it would still be destroyed by the Buddhist sections. The Asuras would rather believe in the Founding Master's prophecy, so the first one to be eliminated was the Buddhist sections. Chu Li nodded slowly. This Founding Master must be a powerful person. The Buddhist heart technique and the Asura power technique were like water and fire, but the current Asura was like fire while the Buddhist sects were like water, far less powerful than the fire. It was like a cup of water to a cart of firewood. There was no way to restrain them. Monk Earth Lotus said, "The Founding Master's divine power was unparalleled. He had severely injured the Asura in the Grand Masters, and the Asura respected him very much. Then where is this Founding Master?" Chu Li asked. Monk Earth Lotus shook his head. "The Founding Master has already advanced to the Grand Masters." Chu Li nodded thoughtfully. There had always been a saying about the 33 heavens. Although he did not believe it easily, he knew that there were more than two heavens. He suddenly had an idea and bowed with pressed palms. Great Master, I have something to do, so I will leave now. I will disturb you again in the future. The gate of the reincarnation temple is always open to you, almsgiver. You can come at any time, Monk Earth Lotus said. Chu Li smiled and nodded, then suddenly disappeared. As soon as he disappeared, the 12 red-robed monks breathed a sigh of relief. The pressure that Chu Li exerted on them was too great. Even though he had restrained his aura, after witnessing Chu Li single-handedly controlling the temple protection formation, they felt that he was like a mountain that could not be looked at directly. Chu Li suddenly appeared at Goddess Attraction Mountain. Dong Jianxin was in Chu Li's basilica. In front of him lay a handsome young man who was barely breathing. It was Chu Li's acquaintance, Zhou Jie. When he first entered the mountain, he had been given a lot of trouble, and Chu Li had almost killed him. At this moment, Zhou Jie was not as spirited as he was back then. His eyes were closed, his eyebrows were furrowed, and he looked like he was in pain. His face was ashen, and there was a faint layer of gold floating above it. His breathing was suddenly intense and suddenly weak, rising and falling as if he was going to die at any time. Chu Li shook his head. He did not expect him to become like this. Ever since he became Dong Jianxin's junior brother, Zhou Jie went down the mountain to travel, probably to avoid his master's uncle. He had not seen him for a long time, but he did not expect to see him in such a situation this time. He stepped into the basilica and gave a fist salute. Senior brother? He had just sensed Dong Jianxin calling him, so he came straight back. Dong Jianxin was holding Zhou Jie's wrist and channeling to help him expel the shadow of death. Dong Jianxin looked up at him and said hurriedly, Junior brother, please save little Jie's life. Chu Li sighed. Did you take the spirit blessing pill? Yes, it's useless. Dong Jianxin shook his head and sighed. The enlightened master's power is destroying the pill's efficacy. Little Jie's life is in danger. Enlightened master, Chu Li went forward in surprise and put his hand on Zhou Jie's wrist. He felt a strange power, pure and overbearing, as if it had its own consciousness, constantly devouring the pill's efficacy. It was the enlightened master's power. Logically, under such an enlightened master's power, Zhou Jie's life would have been long gone. After all, his cultivation level was too low, and he could not block an enlightened master's attack at all. Even the weakest enlightened master's palm was enough to kill him. How is it? Can you save him? Dong Jianxin asked hurriedly. Chu Li nodded. He thought about it, and the inner energy of the real supreme titanium scripture drilled in, wrapped around this ball of inner energy, and pulled it back. The real supreme titanium scripture was abnormally overbearing, and once it entered, the destruction to Zhou Jie was even more severe. Zhou Jie trembled violently, and his breath rushed out as if he was about to take his last breath. Dong Jianxin was so frightened that he hurriedly channeled. Chu Li shook his head, and the inner energy of the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture drilled into Zhou Jie's body, and then reversed yin into yang. Chapter 1821. Zhou Jie slowly woke up. When he opened his eyes and saw Chu Li, his expression changed slightly, and he looked a little embarrassed. Young Jie, how is it? Dong Jianxin asked. Master. Zhou Jie suddenly showed a wronged expression. Master, I was almost killed this time. Who did it? Dong Jianxin said in a low voice. He showed an angry expression, and his eyes were like lightning. He could tolerate being wronged because his martial arts was not strong enough. In today's world, the strong were respected. Even if it was a disciple of Goddess Attraction Mountain, if their cultivation level was not high enough, it was inevitable to be wronged. So he had to work hard to improve himself. But he could not tolerate his disciple being wronged. It was worse than being wronged himself. Zhou Jie said, Lung Shorin. Lung Shorin? Dong Jianxin was stunned. The great Ji Emperor? He looked at Chu Li. Chu Li nodded thoughtfully. Seems like it was his inner energy. I don't know why he wanted to kill you. As an enlightened master, He can't simply attack, or the heavenly rules will not tolerate it. Dong Jianxi nodded. He knew the rules. An enlightened master was more restricted. Dong Jianxin said, "Did you offend him? Or hurt a disciple of the royal family?" This. Zhou Jie showed an embarrassed expression and nodded. Dong Jianxin frowned. "Tell me, how did he hurt him?" Zhou Jie glanced at Chu Li. Chu Li smiled. "How about I go back first and not disturb your conversation?" "Junior, don't go." Dong Jianxin scoffed. "If it wasn't for your master's uncle, you would have lost your life. I couldn't have saved you." "Thank you, master's uncle." Zhou Jie closed fist saluted. His breathing was already balanced. His strength was gradually returning. His injuries were rapidly recovering. He could clearly feel a strange power rapidly healing his injuries. His body was getting better. As he marveled at Chu Li's power, he felt more and more uncomfortable. He left the mountain to avoid Chu Li. He didn't want to call him master's uncle. He didn't want to be stared at and sized up. In the end, he had to save him. It was really awkward. It was as if he worked hard to escape, but in the end, he still couldn't escape from his palm. Chu Li retracted his hand and waved. "No need to be so polite. Tell me, why did you have a conflict with a disciple of the great Ji Emperor? Did you kill or hurt him?" "Killed," Zhou Jie said helplessly. Dong Jianxin frowned. Injuring someone would be fine, but killing someone would be troublesome, especially if the person was a member of the royal family. The descendants of the royal clan couldn't be killed. This was the common understanding of everyone, and it was also something that the heavenly deities abided by. Because everyone was a heavenly deity, once a descendant of the royal clan was killed, they had no choice but to act. Once a heavenly deity acted, if they weren't careful, they might violate the heavenly rules. Chu Li asked, "Why did you kill them?" "He deserves to die." Zhou Jie snorted and said, "Running amok on the streets, riding a horse, and sending several people flying, directly killing them. There were even 2 children. He really deserves to die." Chu Li frowned. "How dare you act so recklessly? No one dared to interfere, but I insisted on interfering. I killed that fellow to serve as a warning to others." Zhou Jie gritted his teeth and snorted. Otherwise, no one in this world would dare to control these lawless descendants of the imperial family. The children of the royal family are indeed a big trouble. Dong Jianxi nodded. The heavenly deities didn't care about the descendants of the other heavenly deities, and those who weren't heavenly deities didn't dare to either. As such, as time flowed on, the descendants of the royal clan grew more and more domineering. No one dared to provoke them, to the point where they were completely unrestrained. Chu Li said, "If that's the case, you were justified in killing him." "Of course. As a disciple of Goddess Attraction Mountain, how can I kill the innocent?" Zhou Jie said proudly. Chu Li nodded slowly and said, "Lung Shoren appeared as soon as you killed the child of the royal family?" "Yes." Zhou Jie nodded hard. "He appeared very quickly. I don't even know if it was a trap." Chu Li smiled. "It's really hard to say. Did you give your name?" Dong Jianxin scoffed with a dark expression. Zhou Jie hurriedly said, "Master, when I saw the heavenly deities, I didn't dare to not give my name. If I was one step late, I would have died, so I quickly gave my name." "Looks like your name is useful, junior brother." Dong Jianxin turned his head and smiled. In a situation like Zhou Jie's, it was reasonable for an enlightened master to kill him. Even if Zhou Jie was a disciple of Goddess Attraction Mountain, Lung Shoren would have killed him in vain. Goddess Attraction Mountain was not in the right. However, it was different now. Goddess Attraction Mountain had Chu Li, forming a strong deterrent. Lung Shoren did not dare to kill him, afraid that Chu Li would come looking for him. Chu Li smiled. "He might not be afraid of me. He might be afraid of Master. If he really killed nephew Zhou, Master might kill him out of anger. You are more famous than Master now." Dong Jianxin smiled. "Young Jie, you have to thank your Master's junior. Otherwise, you would have lost your little life." Zhou Jie smiled awkwardly and nodded. Chu Li said, "I will go find Lung Shoren." "Forget it." Dong Jianxin waved his hand. Chu Li looked at Dong Jianxin in surprise. His senior brother was a protective person and could not tolerate his disciple being bullied. He thought he would not let it go and teach Long Shoren a lesson. Dong Jianxin sighed. After all, young Jie killed him. Chuli looked at Zhou Jie. Zhou Jie nodded helplessly. Master is right. I already killed him, but he did not kill me. There is no reason to go find him. Chuli smiled. Senior brother, you can't be thinking of going yourself? Dong Jianxin smiled. I would be humiliating myself if I went to find him. Forget it. Chuli nodded gently. I will go and talk to him. He can't beat up our goddess attraction mountain disciple for nothing. Besides, he is not in the right. Junior brother, the higher your status, the more careful you have to be. Don't be arrogant. Dong Jianxin said solemnly. Chuli nodded. The strong would be arrogant, and arrogance would lead to death. He understood this principle. He returned to his courtyard first. Xiaoqi was dressed in white like snow. Suru stood by the side to serve her. The two women were watching Pang Shiji practice swordsmanship. When Chuli suddenly appeared, the two women sensed him and turned their heads. He waved his hand to indicate not to disturb Pang Shiji. Pang Shiji's expression was extremely focused. His sword was slow and calm. He looked like a master. Chuli nodded with satisfaction, then shook his head. Pang Shiji's swordsmanship was not bad, but his understanding of swordsmanship was quite average. It was obvious that he did not grasp the essence. He only followed the situation and did not understand the essence of swordsmanship. Pang Shiji slowly stopped and returned his sword to its scabbard. He closed fist saluted. Master. He was now in awe of Chuli. Even though he was so young, he was willing to call him master. Chuli nodded. It seems that your swordsmanship has not been mastered. If it doesn't work, you can practice the knife. Master, I still prefer swordsmanship. Pang Shiji was a little annoyed. He could hear the contempt in Chuli's tone and felt it was unbearable. Chuli shook his head. You don't have to force yourself to cultivate. If swordsmanship is not suitable, you can cultivate the knife technique. If the knife technique is not suitable, you can change to the palm technique. Everyone's talent is different. Pang Shiji said, I want to cultivate swordsmanship. Chuli smiled. All right, then continue cultivating. It's inevitable that you will suffer more. I want to cultivate swordsmanship. Pang Shiji said in a low voice. Chuli glanced at Xiaoqi with a smile. Xiaoqi said, then cultivate swordsmanship. Chuli smiled. Since Master's wife has spoken, I will cultivate swordsmanship. Pang Shiji closed fist saluted. Thank you, Master's wife. Chapter 1822. Chuli told her everything that had happened. Xiaoqi nodded thoughtfully, but did not comment. Su-Ru asked, Chuli, are you going to stand up for Zhou Jie? Chuli replied, I can't just watch a disciple of goddess attraction mountain being wronged. I have to reason with His Majesty. Reason for what? Su-Ru scoffed. He's in the right, but you're not. He ran over a pedestrian with his horse, so of course he deserved to die. He deserved to be killed. Chuli smiled. Chief Su doesn't think he deserved to be killed. He did deserve to die. Su-Ru nodded. But since he's already been killed and Long Shoren didn't kill Zhou Jie, then we're even. No one owes anyone anything. Xiaoqi said, You're right. Chuli smiled. Looks like Madam doesn't agree with me going. You're right, but you still have to go, Xiaoqi said. Not only was Chuli in the wrong in this matter, but the key was also Chuli's attitude and how much he protected Goddess Attraction Mountain. If Chuli did not stand up for Goddess Attraction Mountain because he was in the wrong, people would use this to attack Goddess Attraction Mountain and make Chuli run around for his life. She understood that Su-Ru did not want Chuli to leave because of Zhou Jie. Zhou Jie was a very unpopular fellow. He was unpopular throughout Goddess Attraction Mountain. Moreover, Su-Ru also knew that Zhou Jie had made things difficult for Chuli back then. However, this matter did not only involve Zhou Jie, but also Goddess Attraction Mountain and Dong Jianxin. She had to stand up for Zhou Jie. Chuli said, Then I'll listen to Madam and go see His Majesty. Su-Ru rolled her eyes at him and felt wronged. At his current level, there was really no need for him to be so considerate and considerate. The world was ruled by the strong, and Chuli had already become the strongest, so he could do whatever he wanted. Chuli looked at Pang Shurji. How about this? Let's exchange a few moves. Yes. Pang Shurji was eager to try. He also wanted to see his own limits. He felt that after learning the sword technique, his understanding of swordsmanship had improved by leaps and bounds and could not be compared to before. However, he still wanted to know to what extent and how big the gap was between him and his master. Chuli waved. Pang Shurji shouted, "Watch my sword." The sword was already stabbing at Chuli. Chuli took a step to the side and pointed his fingers at the void like a sword. Pang Shurji had no choice but to take a step back. Although Chuli looked like he was unarmed, his movements were as sharp as a sword. His fingers had already pierced Pang Shurji's weak spot, forcing him to change tactics. Pang Shurji's swordsmanship was fragmented, which made him feel strangely frustrated. He wanted to throw his sword away, but he gritted his teeth and continued to attack. He focused on finding Chuli's flaws. Chuli did not use his inner energy. He only used his physical strength and swordsmanship to deal with Pang Shurji. Even so, he still pressured Pang Shurji so much that he could not breathe. "It's about time," Xiao Qi said. Chuli withdrew his hand and smiled. "It's rare for me to be able to withstand so many moves. Let's practice our swordsmanship then." Pang Shurji's understanding of swordplay had not been enlightened, and he needed a period of accumulation. However, he had exceptional tenacity, which was an advantage of being difficult. If he did not have a good understanding of swordplay, and if he did not have good tenacity, he would definitely not be able to master it. His comprehension was not that strong, but he was tenacious enough. With the guidance of a master like Xiao Qi or himself, he would be able to make up for it. Perhaps he would be able to achieve something in swordsmanship. Pang Shurji secretly let out a sigh of relief. He attached great importance to Chu Li's judgment. If Chu Li really insisted that he should not cultivate swordsmanship, it would be very difficult for him to persist. He could only give up on swordsmanship, which was equivalent to giving up the chance to become the world's #1 master. Chu Li saw through his thoughts and said, "The world's #1 master is not swordsmanship. Without sufficient cultivation, it's useless no matter how good your swordsmanship is. This path is not easy. You must be prepared." "Yes." Pang Shurji nodded firmly. Chu Li suddenly appeared in King An's imperial residence. King An's imperial residence was unusually quiet. Xiao Qi and Xiao Shi were not here, and only Xiao Qi's master was guarding the place. No one dared to act recklessly. Not even Lung Shoren dared to trespass. He left the next moment and appeared in the backyard of the imperial house. In the backyard, Lung Shoren was drinking by himself in a gazebo. He looked relaxed and at ease. The surroundings were surrounded by exotic flowers and plants, and their fragrance filled the air. Chu Li took a step forward and sat in front of him. Lung Shoren extended his hand and gestured for him to sit. Chu Li sat down. "Your Majesty, you are so carefree. I have become an enlightened master. I could do whatever I want in the world. Why wouldn't I be carefree?" Lung Shoren chuckled and put down his wine cup. He then poured a cup for Chu Li. "Come, let's have a toast." Chu Li looked at the wine cup. Lung Shoren said, "Does Chief Chu suspect that I will poison you?" Chu Li nodded. "Your Majesty is indeed capable of such means. I am not fortunate enough to enjoy your Majesty's wine." Lung Shoren raised his eyebrows. Chu Li smiled. "Forget it. Let's talk about Zhou Jia. Did he kill an emperor's descendant?" He felt that something was wrong. Lung Shoren was too calm. He was not nervous and excited when he saw Chu Li earlier. He was unusually calm, as if Chu Li was not the world's #1 master, but just an ordinary master. Lung Shoren did not have a good relationship with him. Logically speaking, when he appeared, Lung Shoren should be nervous and worried that Chu Li would help Zhou Jia. He should be on his guard. However, Chu Li was calm and composed, which was unusual. This kind of situation usually meant that he had something to rely on or nothing mattered. No matter what the situation was, it was not good for him. Chu Li focused the omniscient mirror and observed Lung Shoren's heart. Lung Shoren felt that something was wrong. It was as if an invisible eye was spying on him. He looked at Chu Li in confusion. Chu Li looked at him calmly. He did not find the source, but the feeling had disappeared. He drank another cup of wine and looked relaxed. Chu Li was moved and smiled. It seems that your majesty has something to rely on. Did the Lung family send another celestial? That's right. Lung Shorin chuckled. The ancestors of the Lung family did not give up on me and descended to the mortal world. I really don't have to worry too much. Chu Li said, it can't be like Meng Xiaoqi, right? This time, it's not you who killed the celestial. It's the celestial that wants to kill you. Lung Shorin shook his head and sighed. Chief Chu, you are also a genius. To be able to achieve what you have today as a scribe, it's a shame that it ends here. Today, you're going to ascend to the heavens. Did you not expect this? Did you think that you should live for thousands of years and not die halfway? Chu Li smiled. Your Majesty, do you really have the confidence to kill me? What do you think? Lung Shorin drank another cup of wine and sighed. If I didn't have the confidence, how would I dare to make a move? Chu Li could already see from his mind that there was indeed an extremely powerful celestial descending to the mortal world. He was hiding in the dark and preparing to kill him. However, to be safe, he still had to use a plan to kill him. Chu Li frowned. He did not feel the existence of this celestial. This was a big problem. Could it be that a high-ranked celestial could easily descend to the mortal world? A celestial that could hide from him had to be at least of Song Sizu's level. The Changshan denomination had Song Wuji, so they could send a high-ranked celestial. But what about the Lung family? He frowned slightly. Could it be that the Lung family also had someone important in the Outland, so they could send a high-ranked celestial? If that was the case, it would be a little troublesome. Lung Shorin saw that he was silent and chuckled. Chief Chu, is Suin doing well? Of course, everything is fine. Chu Li nodded. Lung Shorin smiled. Chief Chu, do you still want him to succeed the throne? Chapter 1823. The Titanium Temple isn't easy to deal with, but Suin is. Lung Shorin smiled. Suin's weakness is obvious. Anyone can see it. Your Majesty wants to deal with Suin? Chu Li shook his head. I don't think you've experienced the tactics of the Titanium Temple. Even the Lung clan's ancestor won't be able to protect you. It's okay, I won't do it myself. Isn't it better to let Suin commit suicide? Lung Shorin asked. Chu Li frowned. Lung Shorin smiled. If we capture Third Lady Xiao and kill her in front of Suin, or even humiliate her before killing her, what do you think Suin will do? Chief Chu? Chu Li squinted his eyes, and a blue light flashed. The Thunder Sword of God was activated. Bang! Lung Shorin was sent flying and landed in the bushes outside the gazebo. He struggled, but failed to get up. He laid in the bushes with thorns and thorns all over his body. His yellow robe was torn, and his face and hands were covered in blood. He did not look like an enlightened master at all. He looked like a normal person without any martial arts. As an enlightened master, he bled from the thorns. It was beyond logic. The power of Chu Li's Thunder Sword of God was shocking. Ever since he isolated himself in the Wheel Pagoda and used the Wheel Pagoda in his body, his spirit became stronger and purer. The power of the Thunder Sword of God was much stronger than before. Chu Li said coldly, I'll spare your life. If you continue to be so despicable, don't blame me for killing you. I'll destroy the Lung clan. You? Lung Shorin stood up with a pale face. His face was dark as if it was made of iron, and his eyes were spitting fire. He had a splitting headache, but he endured it with his strong willpower. He did not let himself cry out in pain, but it felt like a knife was slashing at his head. The pain was getting stronger and stronger. Chu Li said, Your Majesty, do you think I can't kill you? Good, good. Lung Shorin took a deep breath and thought to himself that a little impatience would spoil a great plan. He said in a deep voice, You are indeed the world's #1 expert. He knew that Chu Li's martial arts was tyrannical, and he had experienced it before, but he did not expect it to be to this extent. Initially, he was confident that he could kill Chu Li, but now it seemed that he had to be even more careful. Chu Li said calmly, I don't deserve to be called the world's #1 master. Who dares to say that? I don't dare. Chief Chu, you don't have to be so polite. You are recognized as the world's #1. Lung Shoren gritted his teeth and said slowly, "It's not a big deal to lose to Chief Chu." Chu Li said, "It seems that His Majesty is very confident that he can kill me. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said such a thing. Come at me then, there's no need to hide." As soon as he finished speaking, he struck with his palm. A beam of golden light descended from the sky and condensed into a palm print in front of him before striking out. As the golden light fell, the golden palm flew out at the speed of lightning and was impossible to defend against. Bang! A muffled sound came from the void, and a figure appeared. A handsome young man stood in the void, looking down at Chu Li. When Chu Li looked at the handsome young man, he vaguely resembled Lung Wufeng, but did not look like Lung Shoren. It seemed like Lung Wufeng when he was young. "Ancestor." Lung Shoren gave a fist salute respectfully. His face was pale, and his aura was weak. In just a short while, he had been tortured to the point that he wished he was dead. He was dispirited and listless. The deeper Chu Li's understanding of the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture, the more obvious the changes in his martial arts became. When he performed the scripture, he could freely transform into Yin or Yang force and operate it with Yin force or Yang force. The God-punishing Thunder Sword could operate with Yin and Yang force at will. This time it was Yin force. Instead of destroying his soul in one go, it was torturing him bit by bit because it was angry at him for being disrespectful to Shao Qi. Even if Lung Shoren had the technique to protect his soul, he could not defend against the invisible and soft God-punishing Thunder Sword. "You may leave." The young man waved his hand and said calmly, "Yes." Lung Shoren took a step back with difficulty. Chu Li knew from Lung Shoren's mind that this person was called Lung Zhifei. He was the second emperor who founded the Ji dynasty and could be considered a wise ruler. Not only was he wise, but he was also gifted. After he was conferred the title of Enlightened Master, he was able to stop the Fu dynasty's attack and help the Ji dynasty gain a foothold. When the Ji dynasty founded the dynasty, it was to snatch food from the Fu dynasty. The land where the Ji dynasty was located was originally the Fu dynasty's territory. It was the ancestors of the Ji dynasty who rebelled against the Fu dynasty and founded the Ji dynasty. It was difficult to conquer the country, but it was even harder to sit on it. After the ancestors of the Ji dynasty conquered the country, Lung Zhifei became the second emperor and stabilized the country. Thus, the Ji dynasty was not destroyed by the Fu dynasty. If it were not for his wisdom, the Ji dynasty would have been destroyed and would not have lasted until today. Chu Li frowned and looked at Lung Zhifei. He was indeed a strong opponent. His rank was extremely high and was likely to be rank 2, which was similar to Song Sizu. Lung Zhifei was also looking at Chu Li. At the same time, he released a spiritual force at Lung Shoren. The spiritual force was invisible, but it could not be seen by others. However, it could not be hidden from Chu Li's eyes. Bang! Chu Li's God-punishing Thunder Sword stabbed again. The God-punishing Thunder Sword collided with the invisible spiritual force, and a loud sound was heard. Lung Zhifei frowned and stared at Chu Li with a cold expression. He did not expect Chu Li to be so sharp that he could see his soul-tracking palm. The soul-tracking palm used the power of the soul. It could kill people without a trace. Of course, it could also save people without a trace. Bystanders could not see or even feel it. However, Chu Li could intercept it, and he did it without making a sound. He was sure that he could kill Chu Li because of the soul-tracking palm. However, Chu Li also had this ability. Both of them were evenly matched. He had to be careful not to fail miserably. He was born with a strong soul, so he could cultivate the soul-tracking palm. However, the younger generation did not have the same talent and could not cultivate it. The Lung clan's strongest martial art was also lost. This made him especially sad. This time, he wanted to find a descendant of the Lung clan to see if he could pass this antique study down so that the Lung clan could dominate the world. Lung Shoren finally cried out in pain. Chu Li glanced at him and did not say anything. Lung Shoren suddenly squatted down. His head was drenched in sweat and steam was rising. Lung Zhifei frowned and scoffed. Get up. Lung Shoren tried his best to stand up. His face was pale and his eyes were unfocused. The pain was beyond what he could bear. This was not pain that an enlightened master could withstand. The god-punishing thunder sword still contained a trace of the power of thunder. Thunder was the core of all things and the mother of all power. No matter how strong he could not withstand the torture of the god-punishing thunder sword. Lung Zhifei scoffed, "Look at what you've got." He especially could not stand such weak people. His soul was strong, so his will was especially strong. He could withstand any pain. He hated the weakness of his disciples. Ancestor, Lung Shoren smiled bitterly. He knew Lung Zhifei's temper, but the pain was too intense. He could not bear it. Chu Li said, "If we don't save him, he'll die." "You're exaggerating." Lung Zhifei shook his head. Chu Li smiled and shook his head. "He won't last more than 10 breaths. "Heh!" Lung Zhifei sneered in disdain. In a flash, he appeared in front of Chu Li. He slammed one palm down and the other toward Lung Shoren. Chu Li took a step back and dodged. The god-punishing thunder sword shot out again and blocked in front of Lung Shoren. Bang! A dull sound was heard. The palm did not hit Lung Shoren. Chapter 1824. Chu Li said, "It's useless, you can't save him." "What a vicious heart." Lung Zhifei scoffed. This time, he ignored Lung Shoren, and his body expanded into a ray of light that wrapped around Chu Li. Chu Li used the Supreme Vajra Palm to counter. Bam, 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 bam. Chu Li's Supreme Vajra Palm grew stronger, and the golden light from the sky grew brighter. Lung Zhifei's body began to shine brighter too. After 10 palms, Lung Shoren screamed again and fell to the ground. "Damn it!" Lung Zhifei roared and attacked with more than 10 palms in a frenzy. Chu Li knew that he was pretending to save Lung Shoren, but he did not dare to be careless. He could only deal with them one by one and watched as Lung Shoren was hit by a palm energy. Lung Shoren trembled and seemed to wake up. Chu Li was shocked. Lung Zhifei's soul-tracking palm was amazing and could track souls. Lung Shoren's soul was slowly torn apart by the god-killing thunder sword. The pain was unbearable, but he did not faint. The pain was worse than death. In the end, he could not take it anymore and fainted after exceeding his limit. This meant that he was finally freed. His soul could not withstand the torture and was about to shatter. At this crucial moment, the soul-tracking palm came and saved his soul. It saved Lung Shoren's life. Chu Li thought for a while and decided not to kill him. Lung Shoren was half crippled now. Even if he recovered, he would be traumatized and would not be able to resist the god-killing thunder sword. He might even become a frightened bird and would not be a threat to Chu Li. If Chu Li decided to kill him, Lung Zhifei would fight with his life. There was no need to fight Lung Zhifei now. He was condensing the rotating wheel tower. If he could master the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture, his divine power would improve and he would be able to defeat Lung Zhifei. The thought flashed through his mind, and he did not shoot another god-killing thunder sword. Lung Zhifei stood in front of Lung Shoren and stared at Chu Li. Chu Li said, "I'll spare his life this time. If there's a next time, I won't let him go." "How arrogant," Lung Zhifei said. He realized that Chu Li was more difficult to deal with than he had imagined, so he was not in a hurry to fight. It was good enough that he could save Lung Shoren. If he really fought with Chu Li, it would be difficult to predict who would win. He had paid a huge price to enter this realm, so he could not leave so easily. Chu Li said, "Let's have a chat." "What is there to talk about?" Lung Zhifei asked in a deep voice. He heaved a sigh of relief. He could tell that Chu Li did not intend to risk his life. At his current position, there was really no need for him to risk his life. Everything could be solved through negotiation. It would not be too late to make a move if things did not work out. Chu Li said, "It's about the crown prince. You want to meddle in the internal affairs of the royal family?" Lung Zhifei frowned. He was a strong and domineering monarch, and he could not allow others to encroach on his power. However, He was not blindly fierce and domineering. He knew the way to combine strength and gentleness, so he would not easily get angry or deny it. Chu Li faintly said, "Electing a crown prince is not only an internal affair of the Lung family, but also a major event in the world. As a member of the House of High Dukes, I have to say something." "All right, feel free to speak your mind." Lung Zhifei was stunned. Only then did he remember Chu Li's other identity. He was the prince consort of the House of High Dukes crown prince, so he was indeed qualified to participate in this matter. All 12 houses of High Dukes had the authority. Chu Li said, "If I let Suan be the crown prince, His Majesty will definitely not agree." Lung Shoren nodded vigorously. Chu Li glanced at him and faintly smiled. "Why don't I take a step back and let King Ping be the crown prince? King Ping is the imperial uncle. How can he be the crown prince?" Lung Shoren hurriedly said. Of course, he wanted his son, Lung Feng, to be the crown prince. He would not allow an outsider to be the crown prince. Chu Li smiled and looked at Lung Zhifei. "I think that compared to Lung Feng, King Ping is more suitable to be the crown prince, or even the future emperor. It's not like you don't know the current situation. An emperor who knows how to use military force is very important. It's an invisible deterrent." Lung Zhifei remained silent. He was persuaded by Chu Li. The chaotic times had arrived, and the current situation needed an emperor who knew how to use military force. He had also examined King Ping. Although he had no great ambition and had been focusing on scenery and pleasure, he had concealed his sharpness. The most important thing for a person who knew how to use military force was to be indifferent to everything. Only then could he be calm and unbiased. He would not make a wrong judgment that would cause damage to the army. King Ping, Lung Shouqian, was also very talented in using military force. He was indeed an excellent emperor who knew how to use military force. Ancestral Master. Lung Shoren saw that Lung Zhifei was tempted and said anxiously, "My imperial brother and I have never been on good terms. Once he becomes the emperor, I'm afraid that Feng heirs life." Ancestral Master, please reconsider. Lung Zhifei said calmly, "Let King Ping make an enlightened master's oath that he will not harm Feng heir's life. As an emperor, the country was the most important thing. He had to put aside his personal feelings and be responsible for his ancestors, not his useless children." More importantly, Chu Li was on good terms with King Ping, and Chu Li was also on good terms with Fa Yuan from the Tempest Temple. If King Ping were to inherit the throne in the future, based on Chu Li's friendship, King Ping and Fa Yuan would not be too bad. His throne would be unusually stable, and the Ji dynasty would have the foundation to prosper. The disharmony between the civil and military forces had always been a chronic problem, and there was hope that it could be solved. He did a thorough investigation on Chu Li, and he was also very clear about Chu Li's friends and enemies. Chu Li was strong not only because of his martial arts, but also because of the friends he had. Although he did not have many friends, all of them were strong. Lung Shoren hurriedly said, "Ancestral Master." Lung Zhifei waved his hand and said, "All right, it's decided. I will make King Ping the crown prince." Chu Li smiled. If King Ping became the emperor, King An's imperial residence and public house could guarantee that there would be no more trouble. His rear was stable, and he could focus on dealing with Azura. If the Ji dynasty always harbored ill intentions towards King An's imperial residence and public house, he would have to be on guard at all times, and it would take too much energy. Lung Zhifei said, "But the crown prince is still the crown prince, not the emperor. The current emperor is still Shoren." Chu Li smiled. "Of course, I shall take my leave then. Goodbye." Lung Zhifei said. After Chu Li suddenly disappeared, Lung Shoren looked at Lung Zhifei helplessly. Lung Zhifei scoffed. "Don't think about going against him. It's not worth it. Think about how to win him over. If you want the Ji dynasty to become stronger, what you need is not to suppress those who are stronger than you, but to make use of them. If you can make use of all the talents in the world, why would the Ji dynasty need to worry about not being able to prosper? Can't we replace the Fu dynasty?" "Yes, Ancestral Master." Lung Shoren nodded respectfully. He was not worried that he would not be noticed by Lung Zhifei, because the position of an enlightened master was conferred by the Grandmaster. Even if the ancestral master was a celestial, he could not change it. He was only worried that he would be blamed when he reached the Grandmaster. However, he had never thought about replacing the Fu dynasty. The Fu dynasty was too powerful. Not only did they have the Tang family, but they also had Goddess Attraction Mountain. Now that the Tang family was not powerful, there was still Goddess Attraction Mountain. Now that Chu Li was in charge of Goddess Attraction Mountain, it was even more difficult to shake it. Lung Zhifei saw through his thoughts and shook his head. A hero who had no ambition and acted despite knowing that it was difficult was the way to do so. How could the Ji dynasty become stronger if he retreated when faced with difficulties? Unfortunately, although he was the ancestral master, he could not change the emperor. He could only rely on King Ping. Fairy attraction Mountain Pang Shiji, dressed in white, came out of Shao Qi's courtyard and gently closed the door. Then he turned around and walked slowly, thinking about the sword technique he had learned earlier. Chapter 1825. Senior Brother Zhou. Pang Shiji cupped his fists and bowed. Zhou Jie wore a green robe. His face was ruddy, showing no signs of injury from 2 days ago. He stared coldly at Pang Shiji. Pang Shiji cupped his fists and smiled. Senior Brother Zhou, are you feeling better? I've recovered, Zhou Jie said coldly. I'm sorry to disappoint you, Junior Brother Pang. Pang Shiji shook his head. Senior Brother Zhou, what do you mean? I'm very happy to hear that you've recovered. I'm impressed by your intelligence and martial arts to be able to escape from an enlightened master. Zhou Jie's face darkened. Are you mocking me for using Goddess Attraction Mountain's name to save my life? I wouldn't dare. Pang Shiji shook his head and smiled. If I were in your shoes, I would have done the same. Goddess Attraction Mountain can protect us, and we can protect Goddess Attraction Mountain in the future. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Then I really have to thank you. Zhou Jie smiled coldly. Pang Shiji said, Senior Brother Zhou, why are you looking for me? I heard you're very talented and have a high chance of inheriting the position of Mountain Master, Zhou Jie said coldly. Pang Shiji was startled. That was just what he thought. He didn't dare to be so arrogant. It seemed like the position of Goddess Attraction Mountain's Mountain Master was not his turn yet. No matter what, this senior brother was ahead of him, just like Master and Martial Uncle Dong Jianxin. Both of them humbly gave way to each other. Master was unwilling to take the position of Mountain Chieftain, and Martial Uncle was also not keen on it. He and Senior Martial Brother Zhou were far from being Master and Martial Uncle, and he wanted to take the position of Mountain Chieftain. Only by inheriting the position could he live up to his grandfather's sacrifice. Zhou Jie scoffed. Let me tell you, when it comes to Mountain Master, it's not your turn yet, even if you're Martial Uncle's disciple. Pang Shiji shook his head. Senior brother, you misunderstand. I have no such intentions. If he admitted it now, it would be unwise. He was low-key but had great ambitions. Such people were the most unlikable. You can't hide it from me. Zhou Jie smiled. You can't hide it from Martial Uncle either. Yes. Pang Shiji smiled. He knew that he couldn't hide it from his master. His master didn't say much, but with just a glance, he could feel that he was completely seen through by his master. His master just didn't point it out. Zhou Jie said, Since you're talented and you've been Martial Uncle's disciple for a while, let's spar. Please give me some pointers, senior brother. Pang Shiji said. When he fought with his master, his sword art was broken into pieces. He didn't know what would happen if he fought with him, so he wanted to try. Zhou Jie pointed at the vigorous and green pine forest. Let's go in. The two of them entered an empty space within the pine forest. This was obviously a martial arts field, and Pang Shiji had come here to train. Zhou Jie reached out and took an ironwood sword from the weapon rack. Pang Shiji also took an ironwood sword. Although the ironwood sword was made of wood, apart from the fact that it did not have a sharpened edge, its weight and feel were no different from the Qingfeng sword. Moreover, although one would not be seriously injured after taking a hit, minor injuries were inevitable. However, within the immortal attraction mountain, as long as one's life was not in danger, they could always be healed. The spiritual qi here was rich, and injuries healed very quickly. Please. Pang Shiji made a gesture. Zhou Jie's green robe fluttered in the wind. His expression was solemn. The moment he held his sword, his mind became clear. It was as if he had become another person. His calm eyes stared deeply at Pang Shiji. Junior brother, be careful. He thrust his sword forward and took a step forward. It was as if he drew an arc in the air as he approached Pang Shiji. The tip of his sword was unpredictable. Pang Shiji ignored his sword and lightly thrust forward according to the one form of godly sword that he had learned earlier. Clang! The two swords clashed, and both of them took a step back. Zhou Jie was surprised. He did not expect Pang Shiji's sword art to be so good, and his inner energy to be so profound. Initially, he thought that even if his sword art was not as good as Pang Shiji's, his inner energy would be far superior. He thought that he would be able to defeat Pang Shiji with brute force. He took a deep breath and became more attentive. Suddenly, he swung his sword and created a continuous stream of sword shadows, using speed to defeat speed. Pang Shiji tried his best to perform the three forms of godly sword. He had only learned the first form, so he repeatedly used this form. However, this form had too many variations. He had sparred with Co. Qi many times, so it was almost endless. He was not proficient in it, so he could not have endless variations. He could only perform 36 moves. Clang, 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 clang. In the continuous muffled sounds, it was hard to tell who would win. Zhou Jie was furious and decided to use his sword art to win. So he suddenly changed his sword art and used slow speed to fight fast speed. He slowly swung his sword, and the tip of the sword trembled as it covered several acupuncture points in front of Pang Shiji, ready to deal a fatal blow at any time. Pang Shiji wanted to attack first, but he could not avoid Zhou Jie. He still had too few variations, so he could not recognize them. Zhou Jie had already seen 36 moves and remembered them. When he used them again, Zhou Jie could recognize them, so he took the opportunity to stab Pang Shiji's wrist. Clang! The ironwood sword flew out and fell to the ground. Pang Shiji felt like his right wrist was about to break. It was extremely painful, but he endured it and calmly gave a fist salute. Thank you for teaching me, senior brother. Zhou Jie stretched out his sword and picked up the ironwood sword from the ground. He threw it at Pang Shiji. Again, Pang Shiji endured the pain with his right hand and took the sword. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. I'm not your opponent. Zhou Jie scoffed. It doesn't matter if you lose. Keep fighting. There will come a day when you win. You have a good comprehension. Actual combat is the best way to practice swordsmanship. Let's spar every day and improve together. Thank you, senior brother. Even though Pang Shiji knew that he did not have good intentions and wanted to teach him a lesson openly, he could not refuse. If he refused, Master's wife would definitely think that he was a coward. Zhou Jie looked at his wrist. Your hand is fine, right? Pang Shiji forced a smile. It's fine. That's good. I can't afford to delay my swordsmanship practice. Zhou Jie said. He threw the ironwood sword on the weapon rack and walked away. Pang Shiji looked at his back and gritted his teeth. He looked down at his red and swollen wrist. Even though he had already channeled his energy to heal it, his wrist was still red and swollen. It was obvious that Zhou Jie did it on purpose. It was because of his inner energy. Otherwise, with his inner energy as a grandmaster, he would have healed a long time ago. It seemed that he had to work hard to practice his swordsmanship. If he was defeated every day, it would be hard for him to persevere. The next morning, when he arrived at Xiaoqi's courtyard, he was stunned to see her in a loose robe. It was not her usual attire. Master's wife? He approached her in confusion and gave her a fist salute. Xiaoqi sat in the pagoda and pointed to the opposite side. Pang Shiji sat opposite her and looked at her beautiful face curiously. Every time he saw her, he would sigh at his master's good fortune. You fought with Zhou Jie? Xiaoqi asked plainly. Suru was dressed in an apricot gown. She stood at the side and smiled. You were defeated. Pang Shurji nodded embarrassedly. Miss Su is right. I can't defeat senior brother Zhou. Zhou Jie is extremely talented. Otherwise, he wouldn't have entered Goddess Attraction Mountain. You don't have to be too discouraged, Xiao Qi said plainly. Don't worry, Master's wife. I'm not discouraged, Pang Shurji quickly said. Xiao Qi took out a jade pendant from her sleeve and said, This is what your master left for you. He said that he would give it to you when you were really discouraged. It seems that you don't need it anymore. What did my master leave behind? Pang Shurji asked. Chapter 1826. Pang Shurji had a complicated look on his face. Ever since he became Chu Li's disciple, Chu Li had never taught him. Only Master's wife, Xiao Qi, had taught him. Chu Li dissected the sword techniques one by one and patiently explained them to him. She was extremely patient and attentive. Xiao Qi's beauty was unparalleled. Although she was cold, she never showed an impatient look because he was not enlightened. She still taught him as usual, which made him admire Xiao Qi. He felt that his master was not worthy of his master's wife. He grew up without a mother and only lived with his grandfather. He felt the gentleness of a woman from Xiao Qi and was extremely grateful to her. Compared to master's wife, he was not a good master. He abandoned his disciple and disappeared all day long. It was fine if he neglected him, but he neglected master's wife. He should not have done that. He never thought that Chu Li would leave such a jade pendant for him. Xiao Qi's bright eyes scanned Chu Li's face before she said, Although your master is busy, he's still concerned about your cultivation progress. He knows that you've yet to understand the sword technique, so he spent a lot of effort to make this. I hope you'll treasure it. Yes, thank you, master, Pang Shurji said. Xiao Qi said, The way to use this jade pendant is to drip blood on it and stick it between your eyebrows. You will naturally be enlightened. Yes. Pang Shurji could not wait to go back and see what master left behind. Xiao Qi said, Try it now. Here? Pang Shurji looked around. Xiao Qi smiled. He specifically told me to watch from the side to prevent you from being in danger. All right. Pang Shurji nodded slowly. Master really thought of everything. Every arrangement showed that he cared about him. He felt complicated and did not know how to face it. He took a deep breath to get rid of distracting thoughts. Then he bit his index finger and dripped 2 drops of blood on the jade pendant. He then watched as the jade pendant began to change. It was originally simple, but gradually became clear as if impurities had been removed. Then it slowly glowed. Amidst the clear light, he slowly pasted it to the center of his eyebrows. His skin felt cool and refreshing, and his mind immediately became clear. Then his vision turned dark, and with a loud rumble, he suddenly appeared in a vast void. It was like the sky at dawn with a faint blue hue. One could vaguely make out the silhouettes of people, but everything seemed a little surreal. He did not know where he was, but he could clearly see the figures standing in the void. It was his master, Chu Li. Chu Li stepped on the void as if he was standing on flat ground, quietly sizing him up. With a wave of Chu Li's hand, Pang Shurji felt himself floating. It was as if his body had become weightless. He floated over to Chu Li and stood firmly on the spot. His feet were in the air, but there was an invisible force supporting him. He knew that this was Master Chu Li's power. The sword is an extension of the hand. Chu Li's voice was clear and intense. Every single word was clearly imprinted in his mind and would never be forgotten. Using a sword is equivalent to using your hands. As soon as these words entered his mind, Pang Shurji suddenly felt that he was suddenly enlightened. His understanding of swordsmanship had reached a new level. It was as if all swordsmanship had become easy and free. Because he used to practice palm techniques, his hands were very agile. However, ever since he started practicing swordsmanship, he had always been stumbling. No matter how he practiced, he felt awkward. Moreover, he had a tough personality. The more awkward he felt, the more he forced himself to cultivate. Although he had spent a lot of energy, his progress was very little. He was extremely dissatisfied with himself. As soon as Chu Li said this, he suddenly realized that he had made a mistake in swordsmanship. He did not completely turn the sword into a part of himself. The hand and the sword should be one. The hand was the sword, and the sword was the hand. In terms of the subtlety of palm techniques, all 5 fingers had their uses. The subtlety of swordsmanship was not inferior to palm techniques. The tip of the sword was like the tip of the finger, and it could also have its own uses. In this way, the swordsmanship and palm techniques were merged into one. Suddenly, he was eager to jump out of this place. He wanted to regain his senses and try to practice the swordsmanship that he had not been able to understand before. Chu Li stared at him and said, "There is no other way in the path of swordsmanship. The only way is to be familiar with it. Only when the sword and the heart are one, and the heart and the sword are one. If the sword and the heart are not one, no matter how exquisite the swordsmanship is, it will only have the form but not the spirit. Its power will be limited. However, the way of the sword and the heart is in visualization. You want your sword to be one with your body. You are the sword, and the sword is you." As soon as he finished speaking, a sword suddenly appeared in the void. Pang Shiji suddenly felt that it was familiar because it was his own sword. The sword flashed and instantly pierced between his eyebrows. He did not even have time to dodge it. His vision darkened for a moment before returning to normal. However, he realized that he had woken up and Shao Qi was staring at him. "Master's wife." Pang Shiji gave a fist salute. Shao Qi asked, "How is it?" Pang Shiji looked confused. He realized that he had taken off the jade pendant and held it tightly in his palm. It was as if the scene he saw just now was just an illusion and never happened. He reached out to touch the hilt of the sword, but he suddenly felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. It was as if the hilt was a part of his body. The feeling of being able to control it spontaneously arose. He could not help but pull out the sword and waved it twice. Shao Qi looked at him quietly and did not ask any more questions. Pang Shiji got up and leaped to the pagoda. He waved his long sword and practiced the swordsmanship that he had learned before. From jerky, he became skilled, and then he became smooth and soft. It was a world of difference compared to what he had practiced before. It was as if he was a different person. Shao Qi nodded lightly. It was indeed effective. She thought it was futile. Pang Shiji put away his sword and excitedly leaped back to the pagoda. He sat in front of Shao Qi. "Master's wife, you're really amazing." Shao Qi smiled faintly. "It's good that it's effective. Are you confident that you can defeat Zhou Jie? With Master's guidance and Master's wife's teachings, I'll definitely surpass Senior Zhou." Pang Shiji nodded vigorously. He felt that he had been enlightened. The swordsmanship did not seem difficult to understand anymore. It was not that difficult to cultivate either. If he learned the swordsmanship in this state, his progress would be tremendous. He would definitely surpass Senior Zhou Jie. He had a reason to surpass Senior Zhou Jie because he wanted to obtain the position of the leader of Goddess Attraction Mountain. "It's good that you're confident." Shao Qi nodded lightly. Suru poured cold water on him. "It's not enough to just have confidence. You also need to practice hard. As far as I know, although Zhou Jie has a bad temper and a bad personality, he's really hard-working in his cultivation. He's more hard-working than anyone in Goddess Attraction Mountain. Aunt Su, don't worry. I'll work harder." Pang Shiji hurriedly said. Suru shook her head. "I just want to say goodbye. Zhou Jie won't be defeated so easily. You're still far from being his opponent. Even if your swordsmanship improves greatly, you won't be able to defeat him in one go. You must be prepared to be suppressed for a long time." "Yes." Pang Shiji slowly nodded. He was a little unconvinced. It seemed like Zhou Jie was not that strong. He felt that their cultivation levels were not that far apart. It was just that his swordsmanship was a little more exquisite. In the following days, he completely believed what Suru said. Zhou Jie had actually hidden his cultivation level. Every time he felt that he was about to defeat him, Zhou Jie would show a little stronger and defeat him. No matter how strong he was, Zhou Jie would become even stronger. Chapter 1827. Pang Shurji's aptitude was outstanding, but Zhou Jie's aptitude was not inferior to his. To be able to become a disciple of Goddess Attraction Mountain meant that his aptitude was the best in the Fu dynasty, and almost no one could compare to him. If Pang Shurji had not had a fortuitous encounter, it would have been impossible for him to surpass Zhou Jie. On the other hand, once Zhou Jie calmed down and no longer harbored any hostility toward Chu Li, he calmed down and cultivated diligently. His progress was astonishing. Compared to Pang Shurji, Zhou Jie had a greater advantage. He had already learned the heart technique of Goddess Attraction Mountain, whereas Pang Shurji's heart technique was still the Great One Palace heart technique, which was far inferior to Goddess Attraction Mountain. The two of them battled with each other, competing with each other, putting their lives on the line to cultivate, and both of them advanced by leaps and bounds. However, Pang Shurji was always suppressed, unable to turn the tables. Fortunately, he had a tough personality, and even though he fell behind, he was not discouraged and continued to challenge relentlessly. When Xiaoqi saw this, she began to feel anxious for him. However, Chu Li remained calm, as if he did not know about it. He would occasionally come back, but he did not bother about it anymore. He only told Pang Shurji and Zhou Jie not to get serious because Goddess Attraction Mountain would not tolerate internal strife among its disciples. In the backyard of King Ping's imperial residence, the night was hazy. Chu Li and King Ping were sitting in a gazebo. At night, the fragrance of flowers assailed their nostrils. The two of them chatted as they sipped their drinks. King Ping shook his head and sighed. What a joke! How dare they make me the crown prince? What the hell is this? Isn't that a good thing? Chu Li smiled. King Ping said, How is this considered a good thing? I don't want to be the emperor. Chu Li smiled. Your Royal Highness, things are different now. You don't have to worry about Suen. He's cultivating hard in the temple and has no time to be distracted. It seems like he doesn't want to get his hands on the throne. Aren't you going to be the emperor? King Ping frowned. Why did you change your mind? Back then, Chu Li had put in a lot of effort in order for Su and to inherit the throne. He had avenged himself and fought for support. He had also made various arrangements. It was truly unbelievable that he had suddenly changed his mind. Now that the world is in chaos, he has great ambitions and wants to relieve the suffering of the people, Chu Li said. King Ping said, Only when you become an emperor can you relieve the suffering of the masses. Chu Li shook his head. I said the same thing, but he said that he wanted to recite Buddhist teachings to relieve the suffering of all living beings. In that case, King Ping shook his head and said, No, let him be the crown prince. I'm not pretending to be polite to you. I really don't want to be the crown prince, nor do I want to be the emperor. I'm tired of fighting and killing. I still want to live a peaceful life. Your Royal Highness has fallen into the land of gentleness. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. What's the point of fighting and killing? King Ping scoffed. You're just a puppet controlled by Grandmaster. You might as well be a carefree Royal Highness like me. Chu Li could not help but laugh. Your Royal Highness, it's better for you to be the crown prince. Otherwise, your ancestors won't agree to it. Sigh. King Ping looked helpless. He couldn't do anything to Lung Zhifei. The second-generation ancestor was wise and powerful, and he deeply worshipped him. He had always worshipped this ancestor since he was young, but he didn't expect to meet him here. He thought he would be at the sky beyond heaven. However, after meeting him, he realized that the ancestor was not as beautiful as he thought. He was overbearing and could not be disobeyed. He couldn't say no to him at all, and he could only obey his orders. Otherwise, he would definitely be reprimanded. He originally rejected the position of crown prince, but Lung Zhifei personally came forward and forced him to accept it. Otherwise, he wouldn't be the crown prince. Chu Li said, Your Royal Highness, just be at ease and be the crown prince. Just let me know if you need anything. I'll have to trouble you in the future, King Ping said. Chu Li nodded, gave a fist salute, and disappeared. He appeared next to the ice pool in the 100,000 Hills. The azure dragon and the vitality-devouring turtle were asleep at the bottom of the pool. Chu Li smiled. This deep sleep was like hibernation, but it was an opportunity for them to greatly increase their strength. When they woke up, their strength would greatly increase, and they might even have a breakthrough. However, this sleep might take years or even decades. They had extremely long lifespans, and the time they slept was also exceptionally long, far beyond what humans could compare. A red shadow flashed, and the tiny vermilion bird appeared in front of him. It landed on his shoulder, and its voice appeared in his mind. Help! Chuli immediately understood its thoughts. He suddenly appeared in a mangrove forest and saw the vermilion bird he saw last time. It was lying motionless in a nest woven from redwood branches, and it was barely breathing. Chuli shook his head helplessly and reached out to touch its wings. Suddenly, a pure energy was injected into it. The energy he injected was the inner energy of the vermilion bird power. The vermilion bird power was compatible with the other 3 heart techniques, but he could still use the vermilion bird power. Moreover, because he was an enlightened master, his energy was purer and more effective. After the vermilion bird power was injected, the dying vermilion bird slowly regained its spirit and began to fight against the cold force in its body. Chuli shook his head and activated the black tortoise power to absorb the cold force. He suddenly realized that his energy was purer, and he could upgrade the Azure Dragon and the Vitality Devouring Turtle's ranks. He might even be able to upgrade the rank of the level 2 Spirit Beasts to rank 1, and then he would be able to protect himself in the 100,000 Hills. Once he entered rank 1, as long as he did not offend the low spirit beasts, it would not be difficult to stay alive. However, this vermilion bird had repeatedly provoked the black tortoise, so it was a different story. Chuli flashed and returned to the side of the ice pool. The little vermilion bird flew over and landed on the ice in front of him. It tilted its head and looked at Chuli. "Tell me, what do you want in return?" Chuli said, 10 stalks of Enming grass. Enming grass. The little vermilion bird nodded lightly, leaped into the air, and disappeared in a flash. At this time, in the fairy's capital, the imperial residence of King Ping was filled with muffled sounds. Lung Zhifei, Lung Shorin, King Ping, and Consort Ping were surrounded by 8 celestial beings, and they were in a precarious situation. These celestial beings were all very skilled. 2 of them were on par with Lung Zhifei, and although the other 6 were slightly weaker, they were more than enough to deal with King Ping and Consort Ping. The couple could not breathe under the pressure. King Ping's martial arts was not very strong, and Consort Ping, Mu Yulan, was much more powerful than him. It was all because of her protection that King Ping could hold on until now. "Consort, don't worry about me. Let's break out of the encirclement first," King Ping said. Mu Yulan shook her head without saying a word. There was a shadow of the Empyrean fairy in the void above her head, absorbing the spiritual energy around her and transforming it into inner energy of the Empyrean fairy power. Her body was like a phantom surrounding King Ping, resisting the siege of the 6 celestial beings. Although it was a precarious situation, she could still hold on. The shadow above her head suddenly let out a long howl, as if it was a silent cry. The surrounding celestial beings did not notice anything strange, and did not mind it, as they continued to attack fiercely. Lung Zhifei shouted, "Who are you? Why are you trying to kill the Ji dynasty's crown prince?" The 8 celestial beings did not say a word, and only attacked fiercely. His opponent was an old man with white eyebrows and a beard. His cultivation level was similar to his, but he was experienced and ruthless. Even though Lung Zhifei had a strong will and a profound cultivation level, he could not suppress him and could not help King Ping. Lung Shorin's opponent was a middle-aged man. His body was glowing, and his aura was vigorous. Lung Shorin said, "Crown Prince, you're close to Chuli, right? Ask him to come and help." King Ping said, "How can we trouble Chuli with this kind of thing? What time is it? What's there to be so particular about?" Lung Shorin said impatiently. King Ping shook his head and said nothing. He did not want to trouble Chuli. He already owed Chuli his life, but he did not keep his promise. Instead, he became the crown prince. He really did not have the face to ask Chu Li for help. If he died, then so be it. He had lived long enough anyway. As long as he died, the consort would not have to be burdened anymore, and she would be able to escape easily. His ancestors and longshoremen would not be a problem. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.